Chapter 2035. In the battle with Zi Xian, Lu Ye's original plan was to leave a demon venerable alive. However, he failed to do so. As a result, no one would publicize the result of the battle. Now that he thought about it, even if he did leave a demon venerable alive, the other party would not expose their shortcomings and help Jade Conch spread the news. Therefore, he had to do it himself. As soon as he said this, Old Tang immediately understood and nodded. That's easy. After I came back, many people have already sent messages to me, inquiring about what we were doing before. I'll just release a little bit of information later. It was foreseeable that this news would cause quite a stir. When the time came, there would definitely be many factions looking for confirmation. Zi Xian's loss could not be covered up. If someone paid attention to Zi Xian's situation, they would know that the news released by Three World Island was true. With this battle as a deterrent, no one would dare to have any ideas about the Jade Conch. Also, Lu Yi remembered something. Of the 4 top-tier spiritual islands we have, Juyen is in charge of the all-encompassing island. Mount Fangzuan has reserved Purple Jade Island for the little humans. What do you think we should do with Winged Sky Island? The minuscule mountain was already preparing. Soon, Rizhao would lead his people to settle in. Lu Yi did not know which Rizhao would come. It was a matter for the minuscule mountain to discuss among themselves. Lao Tang thought for a while and said, "Divide the forces? Now that fellow Taoist Luan is Rizhao, we can give some people to her to take to Winged Island." That's a good idea. Lu Yi also had the same idea. This was the only way. After all, they couldn't abandon such a big spiritual island. Although splitting up their forces would weaken the overall strength of the Three-World Island, the 10,000 Elephant Sea was no longer a threat. Moreover, as long as the teleportation formation was completed in the future, they would be able to support each other at any time. However, senior sister Luan is still in Jade Conch. I don't know when she will return. You should send some people to Winged Sky Island first. When she returns, inform her about this matter. I will go find senior sister Yen Miao and ask her to help look after Winged Sky Island for a while. Lao Tang nodded. But Lu Yi went to find Yen Miao and told her about it. Yen Miao naturally agreed. Less than half a day later, hundreds of cultivators from the Three-World Island flew toward the Winged Sky Island under the leadership of Yen Miao. The main purpose of dividing the forces was not to occupy the top-grade spirit islands. This was just a matter of convenience. The biggest benefit was that after the manpower was divided, the cultivation efficiency of the cultivators on both the Three-Realm Island and the Winged Sky Island would be improved to a certain extent. Old Tang was busy. Most of the Three-World Island's cultivators were running around under his command. The news that the Three-World Island wanted to build a teleportation formation between the 4 top-grade spiritual islands gradually spread. News of the battle between the Jade Conch Galaxy and Zi Xian also spread. Just as Lu Yi had expected, when the news spread, almost no one believed it. But the truth couldn't be false, and a lie couldn't be true. Sure enough, the top forces began to seek confirmation from all sides, and some even began to send people to the Zishuan Demon Star to gather information. This was because the only channel that could confirm this information was Zi Xian. However, it would take some time to get a definite answer. Under the 10,000 Elephant Sea, Lu Yi was immersed in the seawater. He activated the power of his talent tree and crazily devoured the seawater of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. That day, he had devoured 3 great suns and many Yu Yao, which had allowed him to attain the peak of his source and advance to the Sunshine Realm. Immediately after that, he participated in the battle without stopping and led his troops back to the 9 states. It could be said that after advancing to the Sunshine Realm, he hadn't had the time to stabilize his realm, let alone cultivate properly. The main purpose of his trip back to the 10,000 Elephant Sea was to stabilize his realm. Otherwise, if he went out and couldn't conceal his Sunshine Realm aura, anyone who saw him would know that he had just advanced. As soon as he started cultivating, Lu Yi immediately sensed that something was different from before. His efficiency had increased, and the change was extraordinarily huge. Lu Yi had experienced this change before. Every time the quality of his source increased, his cultivation efficiency would increase as well. However, he had never experienced such a huge improvement before. When a cultivator reached Yu Yao's level, their spiritual energy would be refined by their source and transformed into transcendence energy. In comparison, transcendence energy was the sublimation of spiritual energy. It was undoubtedly more destructive and lethal. Back when Lu Yi was in the late star constellation realm, he could kill star constellations as easily as chopping vegetables. However, even against Yu Yao, who had just advanced, it was still extremely difficult. This was because the nature of their power was different. When a cultivator above Yu Yao cultivated, the power they obtained from the outside world was not transcendence energy. Whether it was absorbing spirit jades and spirit crystals, refining the spiritual energy of the starry skies, or through other methods, they still obtained spiritual energy. This spiritual energy would only be transformed into transcendence energy after being refined by their source. Therefore, the quality of their source would affect the efficiency of a cultivator's cultivation. This was because their source played a crucial role in the entire cultivation process. It was the source of the transformation of spiritual energy into transcendence energy. Lu Yi had always cultivated under the 10,000 elephant sea. The power of his talent tree had hardly changed over the years. In other words, the speed at which he absorbed and refined spiritual energy from the 10,000 elephant sea was about the same as before. This did not change with the increase in his cultivation realm. However, the speed at which his spiritual energy was transformed into transcendence energy had undergone an earth-shattering change. If he could obtain one portion of transcendence energy in a day's cultivation in the past, then he could obtain 5, 8, or even more now. This was undoubtedly a huge benefit brought about by the completion of his source. Even Lu Yi was shocked by this terrifying cultivation efficiency. However, this was undoubtedly a good thing for him. Because of this, his cultivation speed in the sunshine realm would become very fast. Others would need to accumulate tens or hundreds of years of foundation, but he could achieve it in a very short time. He sighed inwardly. The 10,000 elephant sea was truly his blessed land. If he had not accidentally come to the 10,000 elephant sea, he would not have known where to find such a suitable place for his cultivation. After checking the fuel reserves of his talent tree, Lu Yi found that there was still a lot of it. He immediately allowed the talent tree's power to be stimulated and began to condense his blood. The 9 drops of blood had all exploded before, so he did not have the time to condense them. Moreover, the blood was related to the removal of the black fruit from the talent tree, so he naturally had to do it quickly. Soon, Lu Yi discovered something that surprised him. After his cultivation had increased, the speed at which he condensed his blood had also increased. Time slowly passed. There was no trace of Lu Yi in the three-world island. Before he started cultivating, he had already greeted a few people, so no one came to find him. 2 months later, under the 10,000 elephant sea, Lu Yi slowly opened his eyes. In these 2 months, his cultivation had completely stabilized. Moreover, there was still some precipitation. At this time, Lu Yi did not need to use his transcendence energy or release any aura. There were 9 drops of blood in his body, which were all condensed recently. Moreover, he had used the previous method to let these 9 drops of blood carry a part of the black fruit. Under his inspection, the black fruit on the innate skill tree had clearly become smaller. This result made Lu Yi very satisfied. Just as he had thought before, as long as he could condense enough precious blood, there would be a day when he could completely remove this black fruit. This was an advantage he had that the previous generation of the Dao tree successor did not have. He had obtained the blood after refining the blood ancestors' sacred blood. Chao Nian did not have it. There were 2 choices in front of Lu Yi. One was to ignore it for the time being. When he faced an enemy in the future, he would condense a blood clone and self-detonate it. This way, he would have one more method to deal with the enemy. Self-detonation at the level of sunshine, even if it was just a blood clone, could not be underestimated. Previously, when the 9 blood clones self-detonated at the same time, the reason why they did not have the desired effect was mainly because there was an accident that was not under his control. The other choice was to condense a blood clone now. By abandoning the clone, he would also abandon the burden inside. In this way, he could use this method to remove the black fruit as soon as possible and avoid some hidden dangers. Lu Yi thought for a moment and chose to put it aside for the time being. Although the speed of condensing the blood was much faster than before, it still took time and energy. Of course, it was the best choice to save it to deal with the enemy. Now that his method was effective, the black fruit would disappear sooner or later. He just needed to wait a little longer. At present, the black fruit was much smaller than before, so it would not affect his temperament too much. However, before that, Lu Yi still had one more thing to verify. After a short while, he left the Wanxiang Sea, chose a direction, and flew towards the depths of the starry sky. After a full day of flying, Lu Yi finally arrived at a desolate planet. Dust and sand danced in the air, and scorched earth was everywhere. There was no sign of life, and even a large part of the desolate planet itself had been damaged. It was unknown who had caused this damage in the vicinity. After randomly choosing a place to land, Lu Yi flicked his finger, and a drop of blood flew out. While still in midair, it twisted and transformed into a blood clone. As usual, this blood clone had an extremely close connection with Lu Ye's main body. It gave Lu Yi the feeling that it was a part of his body and could be controlled at will. Lu Yi waited quietly. After the previous incident, he knew that this peace was only temporary. Sure enough, after a while, Lu Yi felt that the connection between him and the precious blood avatar had weakened a little. There was also an abnormal aura emanating from the precious blood avatar, which made the surface of the precious blood avatar look like a twisted black. Gradually, the blood clone's expression became ferocious. The connection between Lu Yi and it became weaker and weaker. The twisted black on the surface of its body became so thick that it was solid, and it was still growing stronger. Lu Yi vaguely felt that something was awakening in the clone's body. This made his heart tremble. Could it be that his previous guess was right? If this kind of blood clone was left alone, could the consciousness of the cultivators he had devoured really recover in the clone? End of chapter. Chapter 2036. If such a situation really happened, it would be too terrifying. This was equivalent to the resurrection of the dead, but with a new body. But thinking about it carefully, Lu Yi felt that it was unlikely. The root of the black fruit was the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the cultivators it had devoured. The emotions and desires of so many cultivators were mixed together, and they had long been indistinguishable from each other. Even if there was a possibility that the avatar could be revived, it wouldn't revive the consciousness of a cultivator. It was more likely that it would revive a chaotic mass of consciousness. Of course, this was only Lu Ye's own guess. Whether or not this was the case remained to be seen. This was also the reason why Lu Yi ran out to test this matter. He wanted to know what would happen if he left the avatar alone. As time passed, the connection between the main body and the avatar became weaker and weaker, and the avatar's changes also became greater and greater. It stood there like a gathering of many evils in the world, giving off an ominous feeling just by looking at it. Moreover, there was an unknown sound coming from its throat, and when it looked at Lu Yi, its eyes flashed with hostility and killing intent from time to time. At this time, even if Lu Yi wanted to control the avatar, it wouldn't have much effect. He tried to pass on orders, but the avatar simply ignored him. After a while, the connection between the doppelganger and the main body was completely severed. At this moment, the doppelganger suddenly roared like a beast, and then its whole body turned into a black light, rushing straight at Lu Yi like an ancient, fierce beast. Even if he had some guesses when this scene really happened, Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The avatar actually attacked the main body. If this matter were to spread out, it would simply be a joke. He could clearly feel the evil thoughts and killing intent in the avatar's body, as if he was an irreconcilable enemy. Lu Yi could understand in his heart, because the will that controlled the avatar at this moment was the root of the many cultivators who had died at his hands. It was reasonable for it to have such evil thoughts towards an enemy like him. The two figures quickly collided, and magic power buzzed, and blood surged. It had to be said that the avatar was really mysterious. Except for the fact that it couldn't stimulate the power of the talent tree on its own, it could basically display all of Lu Ye's strength for a short time. After this exchange, Lu Yi felt as if he had encountered a real sunshine. Unfortunately, the doppelganger's attacks were not organized. After all, it did not have a real consciousness. All of its attacks were like a wild beast going crazy, rushing around brainlessly to kill the living thing in front of it. Therefore, even if the precious blood clone could exert the strength of Rizhao, Lu Yi could deal with it easily. He didn't even need to draw his sword. After such a fierce confrontation, Lu Yi clearly felt that the strength of the precious blood avatar was declining. This was the only drawback of the precious blood avatar. The strength it could display was not long enough. This was because its foundation came from Lu Ye's original body. Without Lu Yi, it was like a tree without roots. Relying solely on the power stored in the precious blood, the more time passed, the weaker it would become. If it didn't withdraw it in time, it would eventually dissipate. In this regard, the precious blood avatar was far inferior to the talent tree avatar. The talent tree avatar could activate the spirit inscriptions on the talent tree. The key was that the talent tree avatar could last longer and could also recover by devouring spirit jades. At present, there was no way to withdraw the precious blood avatar, and what should be verified had been verified. Lu Yi immediately thought of something and unsheathed his Pan-Shan saber. When the long saber slashed down, the divine edge spirit inscriptions supported it. Under this slash, the precious blood avatar was almost cut in half, but it still did not retreat. It looked as if it would drag Lu Yi down with it even if it had to die. Lu Yi made another slash and completely killed it. The doppelganger exploded, and blood spilled everywhere. A huge hole was corroded in the ground, and a black aura filled the air. Lu Ye's expression was subtle. I fought with my own doppelganger, and then I won. This is quite funny. Just as he was about to withdraw his saber, his heart tightened, and an inexplicable warning came. In the next moment, a surge of terrifying soul power swept over and enveloped him in an instant. Lu Yi couldn't help but sway. His mind was shaken at this moment, and he even felt a little dizzy. He was ambushed. He immediately realized that the one who ambushed him was not an ordinary sunshine cultivator, because the one who could crush him in terms of soul power was at least in the late stage of the sunshine realm, or even higher. In the dark, he seemed to see a huge circle of light coming toward him, making him feel that there was no way to avoid it. The circle of light was not a physical object, nor was it seen by the eyes. It was a perception of the mind. Soul-subduing secret art? Lu Ye's heart trembled, and his expression suddenly became ferocious. Who was the one who ambushed him? He actually used the soul-subduing secret art to suppress his divine soul. Obviously, this person knew his background and knew that he had not been in the sunshine realm for long. In the face of this level of soul-subduing secret art, he basically had no power to resist. Therefore, the first thing he did was to kill him. Even if Lu Ye's divine soul was stronger and more tenacious than other cultivators of the same level, there was still a limit. In the face of this level of soul-subduing secret art, he did not have much power to resist. In his mind, the circle of light quickly fell, and his divine soul became weaker and weaker. If it was really suppressed, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this moment, a small pagoda quickly rose from the divine sea to meet the falling circle of light. It was the soul-subduing pagoda that Lu Yi had exchanged for in the 9 Continents War Merit Pavilion many years ago. This thing was of good quality in the 9 continents, but in the starry sky, it was nothing at all. It was just that this thing had always been placed in the divine sea, and Lu Yi did not care about it, treating it as a memento. At this time, it ran out to protect its master. The small pagoda and the circle of light collided silently. The circle of light was still falling, but the small pagoda was like a snowflake under the scorching sun, quickly melting, and did not have any effect at all. Asterisk ding ling ling. Asterisk a clear and melodious sound rang out. Within the tumbling divine sea, the sound of a bell rang out. Before Lu Yi set out for the illusory blood demon pupil, Su Yuqing had given him a red talisman and a bell. This bell was called the soul-setting bell, and it was also a kind of soul artifact that had the effect of protecting the divine soul. The things that Su Yuqing gave him were undoubtedly of much higher quality than the soul-subduing pagoda. Lu Ye's originally drowsy divine soul was stimulated by the bell and suddenly regained a trace of clarity. The speed of the circle of light suppression seemed to have slowed down, but the sound of the bell became more urgent. Kacha, a crisp sound came out, as a crack appeared on the spirit-setting bell. Lu Ye's heart was overwhelmed with shock. He immediately knew that his judgment was wrong. The enemy that ambushed him was much stronger than he thought. If not, a spirit treasure like the spirit-setting bell would not be unable to withstand the enemy's subduing spirit technique. Boundless anger surged in his heart. 2 soul artifacts in the divine sea, one was destroyed and the other was broken, but he did not even know who attacked him. Borrowing that moment of clarity, he madly urged his soul power and poured it into the rainbow god lotus in the divine sea. In the next moment, there seemed to be a 7-colored glow blooming, illuminating the surroundings. The circle of light melted, his drowsy consciousness finally recovered, and he had a splitting headache. A surprised voice came from behind, obviously not expecting Lu Yi to be able to break free from the suppression of his soul-subduing secret technique. It was a coincidence that he could find Lu Yi here. Originally, he planned to go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea to find Jiao Yan, but halfway there, he heard a fight here, and it was between 2 Rizhao. Out of curiosity, he hid himself and came to investigate, only to see Lu Yi. In fact, he had met Lu Yi once a few years ago, but at that time, Lu Yi was only Yu Yao, and with another Rizhao, so he did not pay much attention. After returning to the galaxy, he saw images of Lu Yi from several other Rizhao in the galaxy. Naturally, he recognized her at a glance. She was the same Yu Yao he met years ago, the culprit behind the upheaval in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Of course, he did not want to miss such a heaven-sent opportunity. Taking advantage of Lu Ye's unpreparedness, he suddenly launched a sneak attack, and to ensure that he would not fail, he immediately used the soul-subduing secret technique. As long as he could capture Lu Yi, the galaxy could regain control of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. He could even use Lu Yi as a bargaining chip to make the star artifact his own. Driven by such a huge profit, even a peak Rizhao like him could not hold back. His cultivation realm was much higher than Lu Ye's, and he used the soul-subduing secret technique to launch a sneak attack. Logically speaking, Lu Yi should not have been able to resist. But in fact, his soul-subduing secret technique did not have the desired effect. Not only did his plan fail, but his own divine soul was also shaken. This kid is strange. At this moment, Lu Ye's eyes were bloodshot, and his head hurt so much that it felt like it was going to split open. This was the result of the collision between their divine souls. He endured the discomfort, and as soon as he recovered, he sensed a powerful and profound aura behind him, reaching out to grab him. He hurriedly turned around and slashed out fiercely with his blade. This slash felt like it had hit a metal wall. His opponent was caught off guard by the backlash of the soul-subduing secret technique, but it did not have much effect. It only left a small cut on his opponent's arm. For the Pan Shan blade, which had always been known for its sharpness, this was unbelievable. Peak Rizhao. Lu Yi immediately came to a conclusion. He looked up and saw that his attacker was a hale and hearty old man with snow-white hair. He vaguely felt that this old man looked familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before, but he did not have time to think. The old man was indeed at the peak of Rizhao. His physique was unbelievably strong. "You're courting death." The old man had only been hit by the backlash of the soul-subduing secret technique for a moment, so he had recovered. He shouted, and his spiritual power, which was much purer than Lu Ye's, swept out. Lu Yi was sent flying like a paper kite, and he spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. He hurriedly turned around, madly channeled his spiritual power, and used the blood escape technique to escape towards the Wanxiang Sea. He was no match for the old man. Only by escaping back to the Wanxiang Sea could he survive. "You want to run?" Wishful thinking. The old man coldly snorted. This time, he had already made a move against Lu Yi, so he could only go all the way. Trying to escape from his hands was simply a fantasy. As soon as he finished speaking, he chased after Lu Yi, determined to kill him. End of chapter. Chapter 2037. The old man was at the peak of the Sunshine Realm, so his speed was extremely fast. However, he didn't expect that just as he moved, the blood mist that Lu Yi spat out just now suddenly twisted and transformed into 3 figures. Lu Yi had used his injuries to conceal himself and mixed the 3 drops of precious blood into the mist. With such a method of concealment, no one would be able to find any clues. The elder was shocked. He observed the 3 figures and found that they all had the aura of sunshine. He was shocked. This technique was similar to the blood shadow technique that he knew. However, the usual blood shadow technique was not as mysterious as this. Moreover, the shadows produced by the blood shadow technique were more illusory. However, the 3 figures in front of him were real. They were more like the precious blood clones that only the blood saints of the blood race had. However, as far as he knew, most of them only had 1 or 2 precious blood clones. He had never heard of a saint who could condense 3 precious blood clones. There was no time to think, because he had already broken into the 3 figures and was surrounded by them. If it were an ordinary sunshine, he would have been caught off guard and would have panicked. However, the old man's cultivation was profound, so he didn't panic at all. However, in the next moment, his expression changed, because the 3 figures were emitting extremely violent auras at the same time. Self-detonation. The old man was shocked. He had the ability to look down on 3 ordinary sunshine cultivators, but if such a sunshine cultivator self-detonated at close range, even he couldn't ignore it. He hurriedly took out a magic treasure to protect himself. Boom! A loud sound rang out, and the entire desolate planet shook. The originally incomplete desolate planet shattered under the huge impact, and pieces of floating continents flew in all directions. At the center of the violent energy, the old man rushed out with an ashen face. Although he wasn't injured, he was in a sorry state. The protective magic treasure on his body was extremely dim. Obviously, it had been damaged. He had to admit that the self-detonation of the 3 precious blood clones had indeed caught him off guard. The main reason was that he had never encountered such a method before. However, the more it was like this, the more determined he was to capture Lu Yi. He had just advanced and already had such means. If he was allowed to grow, how powerful would he be in the future? Since they had already become enemies, he could only follow this path to the end. Now that the legendary Starry Sky treasure wasn't with Lu Yi, there wouldn't be a next time if he missed this opportunity. Looking at Lu Ye's fleeing figure from afar, the old man's eyes turned cold. However, before he could go far, a figure suddenly appeared from a nearby meteorite and rushed straight at him. The old man turned his head to look, and he couldn't help but be stunned because the figure that was pouncing towards him was actually another clone of Lu Yi. Before he even got close, an extremely violent aura surged out of the clone's body. Again! The elder's expression became serious. He knew that this precious blood clone would rush over and self-destruct. How could he let the other party do as he wished? He immediately used his methods to attack from a distance. Before the precious blood clone could get close, he blew it up. Although his method was clean and efficient, it still delayed him for a few breaths of time. After dealing with the clone, the old man continued his pursuit. After a while, another bloody figure with a violent aura approached from the front. How could there be more? This time, the old man really couldn't understand. This kind of doppelganger technique must be extremely mysterious. Moreover, one had to pay a huge price to use it. How could Lu Yi, a newly promoted Rizhao, use it again and again? In such a short time, he had already encountered 5 of them. Of course, he knew that Lu Yi was using this method to delay him, but he couldn't ignore it because this bloody figure had come with the intention of self-destructing. If he ignored it, the trouble would only be greater, so he could only kill it with a thunderous method. But every time this happened, Lu Yi would take the opportunity to escape. After the 5th, there was a 6th, then a 7th, and an 8th. After chasing Lu Yi all the way until he destroyed 8 of his clones, the old man was sure that Lu Yi had run out of tricks, because no more bloody figures suddenly ran out to entangle him. He was secretly shocked. This kind of method was simply incredible. To think that with his powerful cultivation, chasing a newly promoted Rizhao for so long without success really made him feel a little embarrassed. As the distance between them continued to shrink, he urged his magic power and slowly said, "Boy, if you surrender obediently, this old man will not make things difficult for you, nor will I take your life." Killing a newly promoted Rizhao was not difficult for him, but compared to killing Lu Yi, it was obviously more valuable to capture him alive. After all, this was related to the ownership of a starry sky supreme treasure. Lu Yi turned a deaf ear. The 10,000 Elephant Sea was not far away. As long as he could escape into the 10,000 Elephant Sea, he could get rid of the old man. He secretly rejoiced that he didn't run too far this time, otherwise, he would really be in trouble. It was a pity that the precious blood doppelganger had been used up. When he was doing the experiment, he killed one, but was chased by the old man and lost 8. Thanks to the precious blood doppelganger, he really couldn't be entangled with the old man like this. However, he still had a red talisman that could be used to escape, which had been nourished in his body. As long as he urged the power of the red talisman, he could immediately get rid of the old man. However, this was risky, because once the power of the red talisman was urged, Lu Yi would be randomly teleported to a certain location within the range of the red talisman's power. It could be very close or it could be very far, and it could not be controlled by human strength. If he appeared on the 10,000 Elephant Sea, it would be fine, but if he appeared somewhere else, it might be more dangerous. He didn't know the origin of the old man, but from the fact that the old man appeared on that desolate planet, Lu Yi could conclude one thing. This old man was a cultivator from the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. The old man must have met him by chance this time, and saw that there was an opportunity to take advantage of, so he suddenly attacked. Since the old man was a cultivator from the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy, and he had never seen him before, then the old man's identity was obvious. Ma Bin had mentioned a person to him before and told him to be careful, because this person was the strongest person in the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. That was why he didn't want to use the red talisman. If he ran to the Yuan world, he would be a turtle in a jar. The aura behind him was constantly approaching. Lu Yi could feel that the old man was constantly urging his soul power to shake his divine soul while he was chasing him. However, after suffering a loss once, Lu Yi had been maintaining the power of the 7-colored God Lotus. With the 7-colored light of the 7-colored God Lotus shrouding his divine sea, the external shock was easily smoothed out, so the old man's move was not very effective. Stubborn! The old man snorted. Seeing that the 10,000 Elephant Sea was approaching, he no longer hesitated. A layer of blood mist suddenly burst out from his body, and his speed greatly increased. It was obvious that he had activated a secret technique similar to the blood escape technique. His speed was much faster than Lu Yi's, so this sudden increase caught Lu Yi a little off guard. After a few breaths, the distance between them had reached an extremely dangerous level. The old man's magic power surged wildly. He raised his hand and a whip-like magic weapon was summoned. The whip was lashed out and quickly lengthened, as if it was endless. It crossed the barrier of space and coiled toward Lu Yi like a giant python. Lu Yi tried several times, but he couldn't shake it off. Gritting his teeth, he took out the sword gourd and shot a sword light at the long whip across the air. The moment the sword light collided with the long whip, the sword light shattered. The sword light in the sword gourd had cost Lu Yi many magic weapons to nurture. The total value of those magic weapons was about 500 million spirit jades. He had used it 3 times in his battle with Zixian, and its power had been greatly reduced. This time, it could no longer be maintained and shattered. If the sword light had been at its peak, it would have been powerful enough to kill even an expert like the old man. No matter how strong he was only at Venerable Azure Days level. However, Lu Yi hadn't replenished his magic weapons before, so the sword light's power wasn't that great. Even so, it gave Lu Yi a chance to escape. The 10,000 Elephant Sea was right in front of him. He leaped into it, and his figure disappeared. The old man behind him was astonished. How is this possible? He hadn't been back in the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy for long, and he had inquired about Lu Yi from Yuan Sei and the others. Naturally, he had heard that Lu Yi had entered the 10,000 Elephant Sea under the protection of the Star Treasure. However, he had the Star Treasure's protection at that time, and it wasn't with Lu Yi at all. How did this kid enter the 10,000 Elephant Sea? The old man wasn't naive enough to think that Lu Yi was seeking death. Since he had done so, he must have a way to deal with it. The mistake. If he had known that Lu Yi was so capable, he would have taken him down quickly even if he had to use a forbidden technique. But now, Lu Yi had entered the sea and disappeared. Even if he was much stronger than Lu Yi, he couldn't go deep into the sea to catch him. This was bad. He had thought that this was a godsend opportunity, but instead of eating it, he had gotten himself into trouble. Standing at the edge of the 10,000 elephant sea, the old man's expression changed. At this moment, he sensed something and looked toward the depths of the 10,000 elephant sea. Ri Zhao's aura was rapidly approaching. The old man's face was filled with unwillingness, but he had no choice but to turn around and flee. Ri Zhao, who was approaching at this time, was definitely Lu Ye's helper. It was very likely that he had the star treasure with him. Of course, he had to avoid him. In the distance, he turned his head back to take a look. The Soul Beauty 10,000 Elephant Sea was originally his home, but from today onwards, he would not be able to return unless he had the ability to fight against a supreme treasure in the starry sky. Did he regret it? Although it was just a spur of the moment, he would still attack Lu Yi even if he could go back in time, because such an opportunity was too rare. Lu Yi was alone outside without the protection of the star treasure, and he was much stronger than Lu Yi. Under such circumstances, who could resist the urge to attack? Just a moment after the old man left, two figures came to the edge of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. It was Luan Xiao and Hua Xiai. During the 2 months that Lu Yi had been cultivating in seclusion, Luan Xiao had returned to the 10,000 Elephant Sea from Yuluo. In addition to her, there was a group of human tribe cultivators who had now moved to Purple Jade Island and renamed it Heart Island. When he was fleeing, Lu Yi sent a message to Luan Xiao, asking her to bring Hua Xiai and Xiao Guo to support him. If he guessed correctly, the true identity of the old man was a master who could confront Ma Bin. On their side, the only one who had the ability to take down such a master was Little Gourd. The old man had almost suppressed him on the spot with a sneak attack, and had even chased him all the way here. Of course, Lu Yi would not give up. End of chapter. Chapter 2038. Since Lu Yi led the cultivators of the 3 dimensions to roam the myriad ocean until now, he'd always carried out the principle of taking revenge for revenge. First, it was Bai Yu, then Zixian, and in the end, he'd even turned the entire myriad ocean upside down. In a place like this, any sign of weakness would only make others more aggressive. Now that the 3 Realms Island controlled the 10,000 Elephant Sea, as the master of the island, he was actually being hunted down. How could he tolerate this? Lu Yi didn't go too deep into the 10,000 Elephant Sea, so he sensed the old man's departure. After a while, he quickly emerged from the sea. Not far away, Luan Xiao's aura quickly approached, and Lu Yi hurriedly greeted her. Luan Xiao asked nervously, "What happened?" Hua Xiai also looked over with concern, "How are you?" With the current situation, they really couldn't figure out who would dare to hunt down Lu Yi, so they hurriedly rushed over after receiving the news. However, apart from Hua Xiai, Little Melon was usually only close to Lu Yi, so Luan Xiao brought Hua Xiai along. Lu Yi shook his head, "It's nothing serious." He grabbed Little Melon from Hua Xi's arms and placed her on his shoulder, then turned and chased after the old man, his voice coming from afar, "Go back first. Don't leave the 3 Realms Island before I return." The wheel of fortune had turned so quickly. Previously, it was the old man who chased after Lu Yi, but now it was Lu Ye's turn to chase after him. However, there was still a gap between their cultivations, so it was still somewhat difficult for Lu Yi to catch up. But it didn't matter. Lu Yi had basically confirmed the old man's identity. The old man could run, but he couldn't hide. Contrary to Lu Ye's expectations, the old man didn't return to any of the realms in the 10,000 Elephant Star system, but directly fled outside the system. This made Lu Yi somewhat resentful. Did the old man know he had caused trouble, so he ran away directly? If that was the case, he really didn't have a good way to deal with the old man. However, there was still a chance. When he was ambushed, he had used a backhand slash to injure the old man. The injury wasn't serious, just a simple flesh wound, but it was caused by the Fang blade, so there was still the power of Fang left in the wound. For someone as powerful as the old man, Ri Guang was completely capable of dissolving the power of Li, but it should take a few days. The opportunity was within these few days. As long as he stayed in a certain place, Lu Yi could follow the sense of the power of Li and secretly approach him. At that time, a golden light would shoot out, and no matter how high the old man's cultivation was, he would be instantly knocked down. While Lu Yi was chasing after the old man under the guidance of the Fang's power, Jiao Yan's expression changed drastically, and she quickly flew away. This sudden change was completely unexpected. It was originally just a simple meeting, but in the end, the person who was supposed to meet didn't come. Instead, she heard some incredible news. She was extremely annoyed. Right now, the situation in the Wanxiang Sea had stabilized. It could be said that this was the best situation. The three-world island didn't want to kill them all. The Wanxiang Galaxy had only lost control of the Wanxiang Sea. Although some people in the Wanxiang Galaxy felt aggrieved by this result, who asked them to be weaker than others? In the cultivation world, the strong were always respected. Moreover, based on the previous changes in the Wanxiang Sea, the three-world island didn't have any intention to harm them. The cultivators of the three-world island, led by Lu Yi, had been forced to resist. A few days ago, she learned that the oldest senior brother who had been traveling outside had returned to the Wanxiang Galaxy, so she sent a message to invite him to the Wanxiang Sea. On the one hand, she wanted to have a good talk with him, and on the other hand, she wanted him to see what the Wanxiang Sea was like now. She had no intention of resolving the grudge between the three-world island and the Wanxiang Galaxy because she was also a member of the Wanxiang Galaxy. However, she didn't want to see any more changes in the Wanxiang Sea. In order to maintain the status quo, the attitude of the senior brother who had returned was the key. She believed that as long as she reasoned with him, the senior brother wouldn't be unreasonable. After all, the three-world island was now willing to share half of the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce's profits. However, she never expected that her actions would cause another accident. Now, she received news that Lu Yi had left the Wanxiang Sea with the Starry Sky's supreme treasure, and his whereabouts were unknown. She was extremely anxious. She was afraid that Lu Yi would go to the realms of the Wanxiang Galaxy in a rage and start a massacre. If that happened, the matter would be out of control. The deaths of Yuan Du and the others were Lu Ye's counterattack, and he wasn't at fault. However, if Lu Yi really went to the realms of the Wanxiang Galaxy, she didn't know how to deal with it. Just as she was about to leave, she suddenly sensed a powerful aura from the direction of the Purple Jade Island. It was also flying towards the Wanxiang Sea. The Purple Jade Island. It should be called the Heart Island now. Some time ago, many people from the hominid tribe had settled in, and the leader seemed to be called Su Yuqing. The one who was moving now should be this Rizhao. She didn't know what the relationship between Lu Yi and the hominid tribe was, but since the hominid tribe could settle in the Purple Jade Island, they must be very close. Otherwise, the three-world island wouldn't have handed over a top spiritual island to the hominid tribe. Su Yuqing was flying towards the Wanxiang Sea at this time. Obviously, she had also received some news and was going to support Lu Yi. The two Rizhao's spiritual wills met from afar, and they both understood each other's intentions. Soon, they saw each other outside the Wanxiang Sea. After looking at each other from afar, they retracted their gazes and flew side by side. Along the way, Jiao Yan kept sending messages to the outside world, asking Yuan Sei and the others about the situation in the various realms of the Wanxiang Galaxy. Soon, she calmed down because Lu Yi hadn't appeared in any of the realms of the Wanxiang Galaxy. This meant that the worst-case scenario hadn't happened. Lu Yi had obviously gone after that senior brother with the Starry Sky treasure. Yuan Sei and the others had also received that senior brother's message and knew about the trouble he had caused. They were all gathered in the Yuan realm and were anxious. They were hesitating whether to escape or not. This was undoubtedly the best time to escape. If Lu Yi wanted to make things difficult for them, none of them could stop him. However, the Wanxiang Galaxy was their roots, their homeland. That senior brother who had caused trouble had to leave, but they didn't want to. As Rizhao, if he left the Wanxiang Galaxy, he could only wander around and live under someone else's roof. This was something that no Rizhao was willing to face. Jiao Yan comforted him, but her heart was exhausted. On the other side, Lu Yi had been chasing for several days, but he hadn't even seen the old man's shadow. Through the feedback of the power of brightness, Lu Yi was sure that the old man wasn't moving at full speed. He was doing his best, but he was still slower than the old man. This was very frustrating. The huge difference in cultivation brought about a difference in speed that couldn't be solved. After a few days, the feedback of the power of brightness gradually weakened until it completely disappeared today. This undoubtedly meant that the old man had dissolved the remaining power of brightness in his wound. Although the quality of the Fang blade had improved greatly after he became a Rizhao, the old man wasn't an ordinary person. It had been a few days, so naturally, he could have dissolved the corrosion of the power of brightness. Lu Yi didn't give up. He chased for 2 more days in the direction where the power of brightness disappeared before he had no choice but to stop. Without the guidance of the power of brightness, he couldn't find the old man's location in the vast starry sky. This chase was a complete failure. Engraving this grudge in his heart, Lu Yi glanced at the depths of the starry sky before turning around and returning the way he came. During this sneak attack, the old man didn't intend to kill him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have directly suppressed him with the soul-subduing secret art. The old man probably wanted to capture him. Even so, Lu Yi suffered a big loss. His divine see's injury hadn't completely healed yet, and his head was still aching. Before he became a Rizhao, he didn't have a deep understanding of it. But since he became a Rizhao, he had suffered more than once in a fight with his divine sea. Those veteran Rizhao had unfathomable attainments in divine sea cultivation. A new Rizhao like him couldn't compete with them even if he had some natural advantages. He had to go to the soul race's ancestral land to cultivate the soul-subduing secret art as soon as possible. Otherwise, he would encounter this kind of thing again in the future. Lu Yi had a plan in mind. In fact, he already had such a plan, but he just didn't have time to act on it. But before that, it was impossible to take revenge on the old man, but it was always possible to get some interest. After a few more days of running, Lu Yi arrived near the first Yuan world. From afar, he saw a familiar figure standing there. He hurriedly flew over and asked in surprise, "Yuqing, why are you here?" The person standing there was Su Yuqing. Of course, he knew that Su Yuqing had come to the Wanxiang Sea. Now that the dwarfs had taken over the Heart Island, a large number of their people had settled in, attracting the attention of the entire Wanxiang Sea. However, the Purple Jade Island wasn't a trading island, so it wasn't very big. It couldn't accommodate too many cultivators, so if the cultivators of the Wanxiang Sea wanted to buy talismans, they had to go to the Three-World Island. The Three-World Island had cleared out an entire street, and more than 20 shops had been handed over to the dwarfs to sell talismans. But he didn't understand why Su Yuqing was here. "I heard that something happened to you, so I came to find you. Someone told me that you would come here and asked me to wait here." Su Yuqing looked Lu Yi up and down as she spoke. After confirming that he was fine, she relaxed and said, "Even if you have a starry sky treasure with you, don't take such risks next time. The one you're chasing should be at the peak of the Sunshine Realm. He's no match for a starry sky treasure, but with his cultivation he has many tricks up his sleeve. He might have a chance to take you down before you use the starry sky treasure." Feeling her deep concern, Lu Yi couldn't help but nod. "I know." He dared to chase after the dwarfs because of the feedback from the power of brightness. He could use it to determine the dwarf's location and ensure that he wouldn't be ambushed. If it weren't for this factor, he wouldn't have chased after the dwarfs alone with a starry sky treasure. A starry sky treasure was indeed powerful, but it wasn't invincible. End of chapter. Chapter 2039. Lu Yi asked again, "Who told you to wait here?" "It's me." A voice entered Lu Ye's ears. Immediately after, a figure rushed over from the Yuan realm. She had obviously sensed Lu Ye's aura and had come to meet him. Lu Yi took a look and understood. So it's senior sister Jiu Yan. He was not surprised that Jiu Yan would appear here. After such a huge incident, even Su Yuqing had heard about it. It was impossible that Jiu Yan had not heard about it. However, her coming out of the Yuan world at this time put Lu Yi in a bad mood. "Senior sister wants to stop me?" Lu Yi looked at her and asked. Jiu Yan sighed. "In the end, I'm Vientiane Hikari. If she could, she wouldn't have interfered in this matter." However, Vientiane Hikari's status was there, so she couldn't ignore it. The feeling of being caught in the middle was really suffocating. She could feel the hidden killing intent in Lu Ye's eyes. Obviously, the previous encounter had angered him. If she were in his shoes, Jiao Yin felt that she wouldn't let it go either. Although she didn't know the details of the incident, Lu Yi, a newly promoted Rizhao, was ambushed by a powerhouse like that senior brother. Even if he was lucky enough to survive, he must have paid a huge price. It could even be said that he narrowly escaped death. For any cultivator, this was an irreconcilable grudge. Now that that senior brother had escaped, Lu Yi could only vent his anger on others. That was why he came to the Yuan realm. Jiao Yen wasn't worried that she would be implicated because she knew that Lu Yi was a person who knew how to repay kindness. Back then she had helped Lu Yi and the Three Realms Island. After Lu Yi took control of the Wanxiang Sea, he handed over the Wanxiang Island to her to manage. This was to repay the favor. However, she didn't know if her reputation was big enough to help the galaxy resolve this disaster. Of course, she knew that standing here would make things difficult for Lu Yi, but she had to stand up. Although she didn't have a deep relationship with the Rizhao of the Yuan realm, this was a position determined by her birth. Lu Yi looked straight at Jiao Yen. After a long while, he said, "That's Changfeng?" Jiao Yen nodded. "Yes, senior brother Changfeng." Lu Yi thought to himself that it was indeed this old man. He had thought that the old man looked familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. Previously, when he visited Ma Bin and chatted with him, Ma Bin had mentioned Changfeng. The Wanxiang galaxy's environment was blessed by the heavens. Over the years, there had been more sunshine than just the people he had met. Some of them had traveled outside, but most of them had disappeared without a trace for many years. Even the Wanxiang galaxy was not sure if they were still alive, and if they were, where they were. Only Changfeng could send back some news from time to time because he had been staying in the Shura field all this time. Ma Bin's injury was directly related to this Changfeng. When the Shura field was closed, it was he who led a few Rizhao to besiege Ma Bin. After paying a huge price, Ma Bin's Dao Foundation was damaged. Lu Yi had indeed seen Changfeng before, because when he was with Nan Lian, Changfeng had run over to talk to Nan Lian for a while before leaving. However, when Lu Yi was running away, he was focused on saving his own life and did not have time to think about it. Ma Bin had specially reminded Lu Yi to be careful of Changfeng, because in terms of cultivation, Changfeng was on par with Ma Bin. They were both at the peak of the Sunshine Realm, but cultivation was cultivation. If they really fought, Changfeng would not be Ma Bin's opponent. When the news of the Wanxiang Sea spread, Changfeng heard about it and returned to the Wanxiang galaxy to investigate the situation. A few days ago, Jiao Yin received news of Changfeng's return and invited him to the Wanxiang Island. On the way, they met Lu Yi, who was busy fighting with his doppelganger, and ambushed him. "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have invited senior brother Changfeng to the island of versatility. Junior brother Lu, this is all my fault." Lu Yi raised his hand to stop her. "Changfeng is Changfeng, it has nothing to do with senior sister." Jiao Yen sighed. "Can't you just let them go? They have been very obedient recently, and this was senior brother Changfeng's sudden decision. They had no idea." Lu Yi said indifferently, "They are obedient because they know they don't have the power to resist. If they have the chance to resist one day, will they still be obedient? I didn't make things difficult for them back then because of senior sister, but this time, I hope senior sister won't stop me." This matter had nothing to do with those from the Yuan realm, but who told Changfeng to run away? Changfeng, the instigator, did not care about their lives, so why should she care? Su Yuqing, who had been standing next to Lu Yi, hadn't said a word. But now, she was glaring at Jiao Yen with her soul force. Her meaning was clear. If Jiao Yen tried to stop Lu Yi, she'd have to face her. Jiao Yen sensed it and said in a low voice, "Junior brother, don't you want the fire gourd? I can make the decision to make Yuan say hand over the fire gourd." Lu Yi had mentioned this to her before, and she clearly remembered it. A treasure-grade world-suppressing treasure in exchange for the lives of a few Sunshine Realm cultivators was a very suitable trade. Lu Yi would not lose out. Given the current situation, it was impossible for Yuan Se to not hand over the fire gourd. Lu Yi was unmoved. Take care of those people, and the fire gourd will still be mine. Before Jiao Yan could say anything, Lu Yi continued, Senior sister, I know what you're thinking, but this time it's different. Chang Feng was the culprit who damaged Ma Bin's Dao Foundation and wanted to harm Lu Yi. Now that Chang Feng had run away, Lu Yi had to let him know the consequences of running away. Jiao Yan felt helpless when she sensed Lu Ye's resolute attitude. Lu Yi had always respected her, and even her words were not of any use. It was likely that the few people in the Yuan realm were really going to meet with misfortune. She did not care about the others, but she still had some friendship with Mu Qing. After a moment of silence, Jiao Yan seemed to have made a decision. She looked up and looked at Lu Yi. Senior sister owes you one. As her voice fell, the hazy halo that had been shrouding her face slowly dispersed, and a beautiful face appeared in front of Lu Ye's eyes. All this time, Lu Yi had never seen Jiao Yan's real face. Whether it was Xingxiu or Yueao, Jiao Yan's face was always shrouded in a layer of hazy halo when they met, and he could not see her face clearly. Lu Yi had never understood why. He even guessed that Jiao Yan's face was damaged, and that was why she covered it up and did not show it to others. It was only at this moment that he suddenly realized. Looking at the face that she had seen once but had been searching for many years without success, even Lu Yi, who had weathered many storms, couldn't help but be stunned. He could not believe his eyes. No matter what, he did not expect this face to be hidden under the hazy halo. His mind was shaken, and he did not know what to say for a moment. Su Yuqing looked at him in astonishment. She did not know why his state of mind had suddenly fluctuated so much. It was obvious that he had encountered something extremely shocking. She then looked at Jiao Yan, only to see that the famous Wanxiang Hikari's face was a little rosy, and he was slightly avoiding Lu Ye's gaze. This shy and embarrassed expression, there's something wrong. Su Yuqing's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly, and she discreetly raised her hand to pinch Lu Yi. Jiao Yan saw her little action and was shocked. She could not help but look at Su Yuqing. She knew that Lu Yi had a good relationship with the Xiaoma tribe. Su Yuqing was the Xiaoma tribe's Rizhao. After hearing the news, she immediately left the Wanxiang Sea to look for Lu Yi. Therefore, they should have a good relationship. But now, it seemed that their relationship was not only good, but this intimate action, there was something wrong. If it was just an ordinary relationship, why would she do this? The two Peak Sunshine Realm cultivators suddenly looked at each other. The moment their eyes met, they both understood the meaning in each other's eyes. Lu Yi, who had been absent-minded because she had seen Jiao Yan's true face, suddenly felt a chill run down her spine. For some reason, she secretly rejoiced that Hua Si was not here. If Hua Si was here, then this damn place would really become an Azura's battlefield. Cold sweat dripped down his back. His murderous intent disappeared without a trace when Jiao Yan's true appearance was revealed. All that was left was a head full of doubts. If Su Yuqing was not here, he would have a lot of questions, but with Su Yuqing by his side, it was not easy for him to ask. The atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. Su Yuqing said gently, Louis, did you hear Taoist Jiao Yan's words? Give me an answer. Taoist Jiao Yan is waiting. Louis could not help but glance at Jiao Yan again. He was sure that he did not see wrongly. He would never forget that face no matter what. He suppressed the many questions in his heart and said, Since senior sister has already said so, I will take note of their lives for now. As for the fire gourd, Jiao Yan said, Senior brother Chang Feng has caused trouble. Yuan Se also knows that he can't keep this treasure. He will make the right choice. Lu Yi nodded. Then I will trouble senior sister. Lu Yi took one last deep look at Jiao Yan and said to Su Yuqing, Let's go. Today's matter gave Lu Yi a headache. He had to hurry back to the three-world island to calm down. Jiao Yan quickly flew away with Su Yuqing. Long after they had left, Jiao Yan sighed and returned to the Yuan realm. If possible, she would not reveal her true appearance in front of Lu Yi. Because of some mistakes she made in the past, she could not face Lu Yi. Therefore, she had never let Lu Yi see her true appearance. But today, Lu Yi was stubborn, so she had no choice but to use this method. Fortunately, she managed to preserve the few sunshine in the local star system. But from now on, Jiao Yan had a headache just thinking about it. She also felt that she had let Chu Shen down. In the starry skies, Lu Yi and Su Yuqing walked side by side. He had already mentally prepared himself for what Su Yuqing would ask him. With a character like her, it was impossible for her not to have seen through all the clues, so Lu Yi did not intend to hide anything. But what surprised Lu Yi was that Su Yuqing did not ask anything about Jiao Yan along the way. She even kept silent. This made Lu Yi feel guilty. End of chapter. Chapter 2040. After entering the Wanxiang Sea, Su Yuqing parted ways with Lu Yi. She wanted to return to the Fangzuan Island in a different direction from Lu Yi. From the beginning to the end, she didn't ask anything. She just gently snuggled up to Lu Yi. On the Three-World Island, Lu Yi returned and immediately received many concerned gazes. "I'm fine," Lu Yi said, and then returned the small melon to Hua Xiai. He went to see Ma Bin and told him about the incident. Ma Bin felt a lingering fear after hearing this. This was Lu Yi. If it were any other new sunshine cultivator who encountered a top cultivator like Changfeng, they wouldn't be able to resist at all. It was hard to imagine what would have happened if Lu Yi had been captured by Changfeng. That old dog Su Lai is sinister and has no bottom line. I roughly know where he'll go. When I recover, I'll take his head back and vent your anger for you. Maman said. Lu Yi hurriedly dissuaded him. "Senior, don't think too much. I'm not in any danger this time. It's more important for you to recover." Ma Bin grunted in response. But Lu Yi could feel that this time Ma Bin was filled with killing intent. Last time when Ma Bin was besieged by eternal wind and his Dao foundation was damaged, the truth was that he didn't care too much about it. Battles between cultivators were fraught with dangers, and Ma Bin had long been aware of this. But Changfeng actually attacked Lu Yi. Ma Bin couldn't tolerate this. He could imagine that once he recovered from his injuries, he would definitely seek revenge on Changfeng. Lu Yi suddenly regretted telling Ma Bin about this. He only wanted to find out more about Changfeng from Ma Bin, so that he wouldn't be unable to deal with him next time. After coming out of the Spirit Jade Mine, Lu Yi sent a message to Tang Jun and gave him some instructions. Then he returned to his palace. Now that his cultivation was in the Sunshine Realm and he was the master of the Wanxiang Sea, the small bamboo house he originally built was no longer suitable for his status. So, the Three-World Island built a palace for him. After suffering a loss this time, Lu Yi decided to first cultivate the sword-gourd sword light. If the sword light had reached perfection, then it would not have been so difficult for him to deal with Chang Feng's sneak attack. After all, the sword gourd was his strongest trump card. As a newly promoted sunshine, there were many powerhouses in the starry skies who were more powerful than him. With such a trump card protecting him, of course, he would have an additional layer of protection. Lu Yi had ordered Tang Jun to deliver a large number of magic treasures. Lu Yi still had some left over from the last time he devoured them, but it shouldn't be enough. After all, if one wanted to nurture a sword light to its peak, it would cost a magic treasure worth 500 million spirit jades. "Big brother," a familiar voice suddenly sounded. Lu Yi looked up and saw Chu Shen hurriedly rushing in. His eyes were filled with concern. "Big brother, are you all right? I heard that you were ambushed. I just returned to the island and hurried over to take a look. Big brother, are you feeling unwell anywhere? Is there anything I can do to help? Big brother, just say the word, I will do my best." Lu Ye's eyelids twitched when he heard Chu Shen calling him big brother and little brother. In the past, he didn't think there was anything wrong with Chu Shen calling him that. Even after he was promoted to the Sunshine Realm and Jiao Yan wanted to talk to him as an equal, it didn't change the habit of the two brothers. After all, Jiao Yan wasn't a teacher directly related to him, so they could talk to each other on their own. But today, after Lu Yi saw Jiao Yan's true appearance, some things changed. He opened his mouth and wanted to tell Chu Shen to stop calling him big brother in the future, but he didn't know how to say it. "Big brother, what's wrong with you?" Chu Shen was shocked. "Nothing." Lu Yi shook his head and stared at Chu Shen. He wondered what would happen if Chu Shen knew about the matter between him and Jiao Yan. "Big brother, Why are you looking at me like that? Chu Shen was puzzled. He felt that Lu Ye's gaze was a little strange today. Lu Yi smiled. You are more handsome today than before. Is that so? Chu Shen touched his face and chuckled. That must be because my cultivation has improved. That's right, big brother. I heard that this matter has alarmed Mother. Is she all right? Didn't you send a message to her? Lu Yi asked. Chu Shen shook his head. I heard that she went back to the Yuan realm. This place is too far away from the Yuan realm, so the sound talisman can't reach her. Only then did Lu Yi remember that this was true. He immediately said, It's nothing. She should be back soon. That's good. Chu Shen relaxed and made a decision. Then I'll go to the island of versatility and wait for her. With that, he left in a hurry. In the current island of versatility, the cultivators of the three-world island were undoubtedly the most respected. Even if they were just constellations, they would be the focus of attention wherever they went and receive good treatment. No one dared to do anything to them on the island of versatility. Not only was Chu Shen a cultivator of the three-world island, but he was also Jiao Yan's descendant. He was also Lu Ye's brother. Although he was only Yu Yao now, even those who came from outside did not dare to underestimate him. He was one of the cultivators on the island of versatility that no one dared to provoke. It could be said that Chu Shen could do whatever he wanted on the island of versatility. Fortunately, Jiao Yan had always taught him well, so he did not become a playboy. After Chu Shen left, Lu Yi took out the sword gourd and took out the remaining Dharma treasures. He had the sword gourd devour them and nurture their sword qi. Not long after, Old Tang brought over a large number of Dharma treasures. As Lu Yi urged the sword gourd to devour the Dharma treasures, he pondered what to say to Jiao Yan when he returned. There were actually some things that he did not understand. Back then, he and Han Xi had gone to a secret place. That place was beneficial for Han Xi's advancement to Yu Yao. In the end, they encountered the heaven-desired demonic spider there, which led to an accident. During that process, Han Xi revealed her true appearance. It was only then that Lu Yi realized that Han Xi's appearance was just a disguise. Lu Yi also did not understand why Han Xi revealed her true appearance at the last moment, but he had always remembered that appearance. After that, Han Xi disappeared without a trace and did not return to Wushuang Island. Lu Yi had made many inquiries over the years, but he only found a little girl called Ban Xia in the carriage bell boundary. He suspected that she was the child he and Han Xi had saved in a realm back then. Han Xi and Ban Xia were clearly related. In addition, Chu Shen had also said that Ban Xia was the child of a realm. She was the last person who carried the fate of a realm after it was destroyed. This made Lu Yi even more certain that she was the child he had saved back then. However, he did not find any trace of Ban Xi in the carriage bell boundary. Chu Shen had also never seen her before. It was only today that he realized that Han Xi was Jiao Yan. That was why Ban Xia appeared in the carriage bell boundary. But then there was a problem. If it was really Jiao Yan who had gone to the secret place with him back then, with her peak sunshine cultivation, how could she not be able to deal with a heaven-desired demonic spider? This was what Lu Yi could not figure out. He could not say that she was deliberately showing weakness. That was completely unreasonable. No woman would do such a thing in that situation. Therefore, Han Xi was only at the peak of the constellation realm back then. Since he could not figure it out, he could only ask her face to face. Unfortunately, Su Yuqing was present at that time, so Lu Yi could not ask. Half a day later, Lu Yi suddenly raised his head. He vaguely felt that Jiao Yan's aura had come to the three-realm island. But after a while, she quickly left. Lu Yi frowned and waited. After a while, Luan Xiao walked in with a treasure gourd. Junior brother, this is what senior sister Jiao Yan sent over. She said that we had an agreement. Lu Yi took the treasure gourd. After inspecting it, he knew that it was the real fire gourd. It was the artifact he had seen in the Yuan realm that day. Senior sister Jiao Yan left? Lu Yi asked. Yes. She said that she still had something to deal with on the Island of Wonders, so she hurried back. Luan Xiao replied. Understood. Lu Yi nodded. It seemed that Jiao Yan did not know how to face him, so she came and left in a hurry. After all, there was still Chu Shen between them. Everyone in the Island of Wonders knew that Chu Shen and Lu Yi called each other brother. This was the most awkward part. However, there were some things that he had to figure out. After thinking for a while, Lu Yi stood up and prepared to go to the Island of Wonders. No matter what, he had to get to the bottom of this. Some things could not be solved by running away. Jiao Yan was too naive. Just as he walked out of the palace, a soft voice came to his ears. "Are you going out?" Lu Yi turned his head and saw Hua Xiai standing there with a smile on her face, looking at him. Lu Yi subconsciously replied. "Just in time. I'm going out too. Take me with you." Hua Xiai walked up and hugged Lu Ye's arm. Her soft body pressed against his. "Where are you going?" Lu Yi was stunned. "The Island of Wonders." "Where are you going?" Hua Xiai asked in return. Her breath was like orchids beside Lu Ye's ear. Lu Yi was tickled by her, but his heart skipped a beat. "Why are you going to the Island of Wonders?" For some reason, Lu Yi suddenly felt uneasy. "I'm going to take a look. The Island of Wonders is the biggest spiritual island here. I haven't seen it yet." Hua Xi's long eyelashes fluttered. "Let's go." Saying this, she channeled her transcendence energy and flew out with Lu Yi. Along the way, Hua Xiai talked and laughed, as if she was looking forward to the Island of Wonders. The fragrance on her body kept entering Lu Ye's nostrils. However, it did not bring him any comfort. Instead, he felt a little uncomfortable. This was because Hua Xi's gaze was not right. "Did someone say something to you?" Lu Yi gritted his teeth and asked. Hua Xiai was not someone who liked crowds. This time, she wanted to go to the Island of Wonders for no reason. Moreover, she was waiting outside his palace. There was obviously something wrong. Hua Xiai smiled gently. "Who can tell me anything? I'm just a little Yu Yao." "But did you do something shady again?" Lu Ye's forehead was covered in cold sweat. "Have you been to the Heart Island in the past 2 months?" Hua Xiai smiled even more happily. "The Heart Island? That's a good place. Sister Yuqing is so gentle. She's beautiful and nice to people. I stayed at the Heart Island for a few days. She took good care of me." "This is bad." Lu Ye's face darkened. How did Su Yuqing get along with this crazy woman Hua Xiai? He had only been cultivating in seclusion for 2 months. Why did they call her sister? End of chapter. Chapter 2041. Sure enough, Hua Xiai did not wait outside the palace for no reason. She had obviously received Su Yuqing's message and was deliberately watching him. Su Yuqing probably noticed the abnormality between him and Jiao Yan. She could not show herself, so she could only send a message to Hua Xiai. From the looks of it, the relationship between these two women seemed to be very good, and they were already on the same side on certain matters. Along the way, Lu Yi was uneasy, but Hua Xiai was as gentle as water. Finally, they arrived at the Island of Versatility. Lu Ye's identity was special now, so he disguised himself halfway. Otherwise, it would cause some chaos if he was recognized. Even so, not long after he entered the Island of Versatility, someone came to greet him. It was Ling Yu from the Che Ling domain, Aunt Yu who had always been by Jiao Yan's side. Appearances could be disguised, but Lu Ye's aura could not be hidden. Jiao Yan had obviously sensed his arrival and sent Ling Yu to greet him. "Greetings, fellow Taoist Lu." Ling Yu bowed and looked at Lu Yi with a complicated gaze. When she first met this young man, he was only a Constellation Realm cultivator. She did not expect him to be a Sunshine Realm cultivator in the blink of an eye. He was now in charge of the Island of Versatility and held great power. On the other hand, her cultivation had improved slowly over the years. She was still Yu Yao. "Fellow Taoist Yu." Lu Yi nodded slightly. "Fellow Taoist Lu, do you have any orders for the Island of Versatility?" After the Realm Lord returned from the Yuan realm, he sensed something and is now in seclusion. "If you have any orders, just let me know. I will arrange it properly." She had rushed over after receiving Jiao Yan's message. As for going into seclusion, it was completely false. Ling Yu had a feeling that the Realm Lord seemed to be deliberately avoiding this young man in front of her, but she couldn't understand why. She glanced at Hua Xiai. Ling Yu had heard of Lu Ye's Dao companion, the true owner of the starry sky treasure. Now that she saw her, she was indeed a beauty with a dignified temperament. Although her cultivation was lower, the starry sky treasure was enough to make up for it. When the two of them stood together, they were a match made in heaven. Lu Yi said, "Nothing important. I'm just here for a stroll. Fellow Taoist, you don't have to trouble yourself." He had originally come here to ask Jiao Yan some questions. Now that Hua Xi had followed him, he would definitely not be able to ask. He might as well give up and wait for another chance. If that's the case. Ling Yu did not suspect anything. If you have any requests, feel free to send me a message. The Realm Lord is currently in seclusion, and I'm currently in charge of the Island of Versatility. Thank you, fellow Taoist Yu. After Ling Yu left, Lu Yi stood in place and pondered for a moment before turning to look at Hua Xi. Where are you going? I'm just strolling around. Hua Xi smiled gently, her eyes narrowed into crescents. She intimately held Lu Ye's arm and walked towards the island of all appearances. Lu Yi knew he couldn't refuse, so he could only let her go. Not long after, in front of a shop, Hua Xi seemed to have seen something novel. Her beautiful eyes lit up as she walked over. A moment later, she beckoned to Lu Yi behind her and called out, "Husband, come over quickly." Lu Yi, who was leisurely walking in that direction, froze. He almost suspected that he had misheard. They had known each other for so many years, but Hua Xi had never called him so intimately. She had always called him by his name. This sudden intimacy caused Lu Ye's hair to stand on end. He knew that he was in deep trouble. He braced himself and walked forward, only to see that Hua Xi had already taken out a hairpin and inserted it into her hair. The hairpin had the shape of a butterfly, and as Hua Xi moved, the butterfly gently spread its wings as though it was alive. Not only that, there were also light and shadow floating around the hairpin, and illusory butterfly shadows appearing and disappearing one after another. With such a hairpin on a beauty like Hua Xi, it really added to her beauty, dazzling many cultivators who passed by. "Husband, does it look good?" Hua Xi looked at Lu Yi with an expectant expression. Lu Yi nodded. The shopkeeper said with a smile, "Madam, you have good eyesight. This dancing butterflies is the treasure of our shop. Not only is it beautiful, but it is also a 6th-grade defensive magic weapon. When magic power is injected into it, it can provide an extremely powerful defensive power. Madam's dignified temperament is especially compatible with this magic weapon. It is truly tailor-made for Madam. You must not miss it." He flattered. He was well-versed in the ways of business. Hua Xi picked up another hairpin and put it on her head. This hairpin was even more dazzling than the previous one, further accentuating Hua Xi's beauty. "Does it look good?" Lu Yi nodded like a chick pecking at rice. Hua Xi smiled and picked up the 3rd hairpin. She put it on her head. "What about this one?" "Yes, it looks good." Lu Yi nodded again. The shopkeeper at the side was grinning from ear to ear. The items that Hua Xi had chosen were all the most valuable items in their store. She had chosen 3 items in one go. If they were to sell them all, they would make a huge profit. He nodded and bowed beside Hua Xi, trying his best to introduce the advantages of his goods. He had been running this shop for many years, so he naturally had a pair of discerning eyes. Lu Yi and Hua Xi were the kind who did not lack money at first glance, so they were naturally worthy of his attention. "They all look good?" Hua Xi ignored him and only glanced sideways at Lu Yi, the corners of her mouth rising. "So husband is also a person who likes the new and dislikes the old." Lu Ye's expression stiffened. He was wondering why Hua Xi was suddenly interested in buying hairpins. It turned out that she was talking about him. He quickly said, "Of course it looks good on you. If it were someone else, it wouldn't have such an effect." Hua Xi snorted softly. She took off the hairpins and put them back in their original places, then turned and left. The shopkeeper was dumbfounded. He could not understand how such a good business deal could be ruined. Lu Yi urged, "What are you standing there for? Hurry up and pack them up." The shopkeeper was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He hurriedly packed up the 3 hairpins. Lu Yi handed over the spiritual jades and turned to chase after Hua Xi. When he found her, she was already holding a stick of candied haws. After taking a bite, she frowned. "It's so sour, here you go." She handed the unfinished stick of candied haws to Lu Yi. Lu Yi blinked and took it. He was thinking of finding a place to throw it away. He was the master of the Wanxiang Ocean, a supreme sunshine cultivator. How could he eat candied haws in public? Hua Xi said, "You spent money to buy it. You can't throw it away. Hurry up and eat it." "I'll eat it." Lu Yi had a look of resignation. Hua Xi had never been an unreasonable person. She purposely came to the island of versatility with him and caused so much trouble. It was obvious that she was doing it on purpose. Lu Yi was well aware of it, but he could not point it out. He could only obediently cooperate. For the next half of the day, the two of them walked and strolled, as if they were the most ordinary couple. Hua Xi would buy something from time to time, but she would only take a bite of it and leave it all to Lu Yi to handle. If Lu Yi was really just an ordinary person, his stomach would probably burst. As they walked, they arrived at the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce. "I'm tired." Hua Xi suddenly stopped and said, "Then let's go back." Lu Yi was relieved. Ever since he came to the Wanxiang Ocean, he had entered and exited the island of versatility many times, but he had never experienced such torment. Now it was finally over. Hua Xi leaned over and whispered into his ear, "I heard that the third floor of the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce is a guest room for people to rest in?" Lu Yi was shocked and hurriedly dissuaded her, "Wouldn't it be better to go back and rest? As the saying goes, a home is not as good as a dog's nest." Hua Xi smiled and didn't say anything. She grabbed Lu Ye's hand and dragged him into the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce. She found a manager and booked the most luxurious guest room. A moment later, Lu Yi stood in front of the guest room on the top floor of the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce with a serious expression. Hua Xi had already walked around the room. She was obviously satisfied with the environment. She stuck her head out of the room and waved at Lu Yi, "Come in, husband." Lu Yi knew that he couldn't escape this time. He could only take a deep breath and walk forward. Even if there were thousands of people, he would still walk forward. He didn't believe that he couldn't take care of a mere Hua Xi. Even Su Yuqing, who was at the peak of the Sunshine Realm, was defeated by him. What right did Hua Xi have to be so arrogant? This time, he would show her how powerful he was. A person couldn't keep falling in the same place. There would be a day when he would stand up again. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. Outside the island of versatility, a planetary boat shaped like a flower basket flew out. Lu Yi sat cross-legged on it, resting with his eyes closed. Hua Xi, who was steering the planetary boat, was flushed. She suddenly sensed something and turned around. At the same time, on the island of versatility, Zhou Yan was looking in this direction at the spiritual jade mine. Hua Xi's lips curled up slightly. She turned around as if she had won a battle and was about to return in triumph. After returning to the three-world island, Hua Xi put away the planetary boat and said gently, "Husband, you must be exhausted. Go back and rest early. Don't run around if you have nothing to do. There's nothing fun on the island of versatility. The three-world island has everything. Husband, if you want anything, just tell me and I'll arrange it for you." Lu Yi said weakly, "Don't call me husband. I'm not." He slowly walked towards the direction of the pill room. Hua Xi held back her laughter behind him. "Walk slowly. Don't fall." Lu Yi immediately straightened his back and walked as if he was flying. Hua Xi's laughter grew louder. This hateful woman. For a gentleman to take revenge, 10 years is not too late, 100 years is not too late. Just you wait. Lu Yi swore in his heart. He found Yi and Hu Po, who were with his second senior sister, in the pill room. Lu Yi called out, "Let's go." Yi was puzzled. "Where are we going?" "Back to the land of the 9 prefectures." Lu Yi said concisely. "You're going back so soon?" Yi was obviously reluctant. However, after thinking about it, she had to go back eventually. Moreover, the sooner she went back, the sooner she could continue to cultivate. Only when she became stronger in the future could she continue to help Lu Yi. She immediately made up her mind. There was nothing to pack. After a while, Lu Yi drove his planetary boat and flew towards the insect path with E and Hoop. End of chapter. Chapter 2042. On the star boat, Lu Yi played with the fire gourd. This thing was the treasure of the Yuan world. When he saw it that day, Lu Yi was tempted. According to the feedback from the Azura field, 7 gourds were born on the vine of fortune. If he could gather all 7 gourds, he could repeat the miracle of fortune. Lu Yi didn't know what kind of miracle of fortune it was, and he didn't want to gather all 7 gourds because it was too difficult. He now had the pill gourd, sword gourd, fire gourd, and the wind gourd. As for the other 3, he didn't know where they were. Even if he wanted to find them, he had no way to do so. If it weren't for Changfeng, Lu Yi wouldn't have been able to get the fire gourd so easily. When he was ambushed by Changfeng, other than losing an incomplete sword chi from the sword gourd and 8 precious blood clones, he didn't suffer any substantial losses. Getting the fire gourd was not a loss. Upon closer inspection, he could indeed sense that there was an unusually ferocious heavenly fire within the fire gourd. Back then, Yuan Sei had relied on this treasure to fight with Shang Qingyue from the Formless Palace. The battle had been intense. If Shang Qingyue had not requested for a Merak sword aura in advance, he would have been defeated. At that time, when Yuan Sei used the fire gourd, Lu Yi felt that the talent tree had some reaction. This undoubtedly meant that the quality of the strange flame in the fire gourd was very high. If the talent tree could swallow it, it would be beneficial. Now that he observed it carefully, Lu Yi found that the strange flame in the fire gourd was extraordinary. Such a fierce flame was not something an ordinary Rizhao could resist. Even if it was him, he wouldn't be able to put up much of a fight against such a strange flame with his own strength. Lu Yi couldn't help but feel sad. It took a long time for a cultivator to cultivate. It wasn't easy to advance to Rizhao. He thought that he could dominate the cultivation world, but in fact, he couldn't even resist the power of a treasure. It was a tragedy. Fortunately, although there were many treasures in the world, Ma Bin said that they were regarded as treasures by the major forces and wouldn't be used easily. There were only a few examples of God Cloud carrying the heavenly Luo umbrella around. God Cloud was too arrogant and relied on the heavenly Luo umbrella to be indestructible. Who knew that he would encounter a real starry sky treasure and be destroyed directly? Now that the damaged heavenly Luo umbrella was in Hua Xi's hands, she had placed it by Little Melon's side to be nurtured. He didn't know if there was any possibility of it being restored. The strange fire was ferocious, but that was only for cultivators. To the talent tree, it was a great supplement. Lu Yi didn't hesitate and slightly activated the talent tree's power. The formless roots immediately probed into the gourd. In the next instant, Lu Yi felt a strange burning heat being crazily devoured by the talent tree. Although the strange fire in the fire gourd was powerful, he already had the sword gourd as his trump card. It didn't matter whether he had this strange fire or not. If the sword gourd couldn't deal with an opponent at its peak, the fire gourd wouldn't be of much use. He quietly sensed the changes in the talent tree and revealed a puzzled expression after a short while. This was because he did not feel any increase in his talent tree's fuel reserves. This was obviously not normal. For a long time, the talent tree devoured any fire attribute energy to increase its own fuel reserves for Lu Ye's future use. Ever since the talent tree's first transformation, Lu Yi could easily sense its fuel reserves, so he knew in his heart whether the reserves were increasing or decreasing. However, after the talent tree devoured the strange fire this time, its fuel reserves did not increase at all. On the contrary, the talent tree itself seemed to have undergone some strange changes. This change was very small, and if Lu Yi didn't know the talent tree's situation like the back of his hand, he wouldn't have noticed it at all. Lu Yi calmed his mind and continued to investigate. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the strange fire in the fire gourd disappeared and was completely devoured by the talent tree. Under his observation, Lu Yi clearly found that the flames on the talent tree had become a little more viscous. This change was... Lu Yi was first shocked, then delighted, because he had experienced this change several times before. It was a sign that the talent tree was about to transform. So far, since he obtained the talent tree, It had undergone 3 transformations. When Lu Yi first obtained the talent tree, it could only help him refine the spirit pills he swallowed into his body to increase his cultivation speed. However, after the first transformation, the talent tree's power had clearly increased. It had roots that could extend out of its body. With these roots, Lu Yi could devour and refine the spirit qi outside his body, spirit stones, and the like, greatly increasing his cultivation speed. At the same time, he also had a talent tree clone. After the second transformation, the talent tree had the effect of deriving spirit runes. All kinds of spirit runes became easier under the derivation of the talent tree, and Lu Yi could inscribe new spirit runes on the leaves. After the third transformation, by consuming fuel, the talent tree could accelerate the derivation of spirit runes. Moreover, the talent tree's instinctive power became gentler and could be used on outsiders. Without this change, Lu Yi wouldn't have been able to help the mermaid clan resolve the bloodline curse back then. Under the activation of the talent tree's power, the mermaid clan cultivators would have been burned to ashes on the spot. Many years had passed since the talent tree had undergone 3 transformations. Lu Yi had always felt that the talent tree's 3 transformations were not the limit. He had also been waiting for the talent tree's 4th transformation. He wanted to know what changes would happen to the talent tree after the 4th transformation, and what new mysteries would be born. Unfortunately, all these years, no matter how many fire elemental treasures Lu Yi devoured, there were no signs of the talent tree transforming. In fact, there wasn't even the slightest sign of a possibility. Until today. After the talent tree devoured the special fire in the fire gourd, this sign appeared. The surprise came so suddenly that Lu Yi couldn't react for a moment. He confirmed a few times that this was indeed a sign that the talent tree was about to transform. Of course, this was just a small sign and it was still far from the talent tree's transformation. Once the talent tree transformed, it would turn into a fire seed and be reborn. But why was it like this? The talent tree spent an incense's time to devour that ball of special fire. Calculating it, there wasn't much of it. If one were to calculate based on the devouring speed, this bit of time wouldn't bring much of an increase to the talent tree's fuel. But the current situation was that there was no change in the fuel storage, but the talent tree itself had changed. After thinking for a moment, Lu Yi vaguely felt that this should have something to do with quality. The 4th transformation of the talent tree required not only a quantity of fire elemental treasures, but more importantly, a guarantee of quality. This was completely different from the previous 3 times. The previous 3 times, as long as the talent tree devoured enough, the transformation would happen naturally. The fire elemental treasures that Lu Yi devoured in the past were of good quality, but they were far from reaching the requirements of the talent tree. So even if he devoured them, it would only increase the fuel storage. It was different this time. The special fire nurtured by the fire gourd was an extremely high-quality treasure in the entire galaxy. That was why it triggered a change in the talent tree. That was why the talent tree reacted when Yuan Sei took out the special fire from the fire gourd. Because it was helpful to the talent tree's transformation. This was just Lu Ye's guess, but it shouldn't be wrong. If he wanted to verify this guess, it was simple. He just needed to devour another special fire of the same quality and he would be able to make a judgment. With that thought, Lu Yi hurriedly started refining the fire gourd. The birth and nurturing of the special fire in the fire gourd was the same as the nurturing of the sword aura in the sword gourd. They both required a large amount of investment. However, while the nurturing of the sword aura required all kinds of magic treasures, the special fire required a large amount of fire elemental energy. Therefore, Lu Yi needed to refine the fire gourd before he could start nurturing the special fire. If he didn't refine it, he wouldn't even have the qualifications to activate the fire gourd's power. How could he nurture the special fire? Yuan Sei was tactful. When he handed over the fire gourd, he had already erased the various marks he left on it. This would undoubtedly make Lu Ye's refining process much easier. Lu Yi, we've arrived at the insect path. Yi's voice entered his ears. It didn't take long for them to arrive. She could see that Lu Yi was busy, so she didn't disturb him. Hearing her voice, Lu Yi opened his eyes, stood up, and put away the star boat. In front of the insect path's entrance, a Yu-Yao-class central battleship was parked. Jade Conch and Yu Yao, who were stationed here, came forward. Lu Yi asked a few simple questions. After learning that everything was fine, he led Yi and Hu Pe into the insect path. After all, this insect path wasn't stable. Only Rizhao could easily cross it with his physical body. If others wanted to pass through, they would have to rely on the battleship's protection. Therefore, even though many people had heard that this insect path was connected to the Jade Conch galaxy, no one dared to barge in recklessly. Perhaps in the future, when the insect path was stable, some people would borrow it to take a look at the Jade Conch galaxy, but not now. After passing through the insect path, when his vision cleared, Lu Yi had already returned to the Jade Conch galaxy. He saw another Yu Yao-class battleship here. He sighed. It was so difficult for him to return to the 9 states from the Wanxiang Sea. Even if he could use the Soul Tribe's ancestral land, it would still take some effort. It was so much more convenient now. When Lu Yi appeared, he immediately attracted the attention of the nearby cultivators. They all came forward to greet him. He looked around and found that many cultivators of the 3 realms had gathered here. They were obviously planning to enter the Wanxiang galaxy through the insect path. However, because they had to rely on the protection of the battleship every time they passed through, this kind of passage was only available once a month. It wasn't time yet, so the cultivators were still waiting. When the battleship here went to the other side, it would still come back. It was a little troublesome, and it would also consume a lot of spiritual jades. However, this was the only way to ensure their safety. Lu Yi didn't stay for too long. He continued to lead Yi and Hu Pe toward the entrance of the ancestral land. It had to be said that the cultivators of the 3 realms were much more fortunate than he was in the past. Staying in the Jade Conch galaxy, they could go to the Azura field of the 9 states to train themselves. If they were bored, they could take the once-a-month battleship to travel to the Wanxiang Sea. They wouldn't be idle. In such a state, the Jade Conch galaxy was clearly showing signs of prosperity. When it accumulated to a certain extent, its overall strength would definitely erupt like a geyser. Lu Yi looked forward to the arrival of that day. Today, I have to go out for a trip. End of chapter. Chapter 2043. The passageway to the ancestral land was near the 9 states. Lu Yi went back to the 9 states to take a look and chatted with Little Nine. The news of Lu Ye's agreement with Old Tang and Wu Zhuo to merge the realms had spread recently. A large number of Tianji pillars were placed in the Qingli Dao world, opening up many doors to the 9 states. The entire Qingli Dao world was in the midst of a great migration. When the migration was almost complete, the Tianji pillars would lead the Qingli Dao world to the 9 states and finally merge the realms. When the time came, the Qingli Dao world would be completely integrated into the 9 states and there would be no distinction between them. The foundation of the 9 states would also be greatly strengthened. This matter was mainly handled by Wu Zhuo, with Little Nine assisting in the dark. Everything went smoothly. Without stopping for too long, Lu Yi brought Yi and Hu Pe to the entrance. With the guidance of the Rainbow God Lotus, they opened the passageway and entered the ancestral land of the Soul Clan. Yi and Hu Pe returned to Li Shang's Lotus Land to cultivate, while Lu Yi went straight to the Starry Sky Pool. After a while, they met Su Yuan again. Lu Yi came to the ancestral land of the Soul Clan mainly to cultivate his soul-subduing secret skill. He had suffered too much in the past. When he fought with the old Rizhao, he was always at a disadvantage in terms of soul power. This was not only because his soul power was inferior to others, but also because he did not have time to cultivate his soul-subduing secret skill. If soul power was compared to a person's strength, then when he fought with the old Rizhao, Lu Yi was barehanded. However, the old Rizhao had their own weapons, and those weapons were their soul-subduing secret skill. Of course, Lu Yi was not at an advantage. This was a journey that every Rizhao had to go through. It was also a painstaking effort. It could be said that Rizhao's cultivation journey was almost constantly polishing his soul-subduing secret skill. The increase in the Rizhao realm was not only about the accumulation of one's mana, but more importantly, the consolidation of one's soul. This was because this realm was the cultivation of the spirit of the essence, Qi and spirit. Lu Yi had some understanding of the soul-subduing secret skill. He had asked Ma Bin and talked about it with Su Yuqing before. However, in the entire galaxy, the Soul Clan was undoubtedly the most powerful. No matter how strong anyone else was, they were still inferior to the Soul Clan. Soul power cultivation was the foundation of the Soul Clan. Lu Yi had stayed in Su Yuan's place for a few days, listening to him explain the mysteries of the soul-suppressing secret magic in simple terms, which had benefited Lu Yi greatly. If one wanted to cultivate the soul-subduing secret technique, they would first have to make a choice. Everyone's soul-subduing secret technique was different. Only by finding the one most suitable for oneself would one be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. If a soul-subduing secret technique was not suitable for oneself, forcing oneself to cultivate would naturally slow down the progress of one's growth. Lu Yi was now faced with this choice. He was very troubled. It wasn't that there was no choice, but that there were too many choices. Under normal circumstances, the soul-subduing secret technique that the Rizhao chose was the soul-subduing secret technique that they were best at. When a cultivator reached the Spirit Sea realm, they would already have a divine soul and their own soul body. Regardless of which sect a cultivator belonged to, they would more or less practice some soul techniques as a means to fight against their enemies. Using his most proficient soul techniques as a foundation to create a soul-subduing secret technique was undoubtedly the best and most suitable choice. Then what was the soul technique that he was most proficient in? Lu Yi looked at the complicated patterns on the burning leaves on the talent tree and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. These spirit patterns on the talent tree, if he used his magic power to construct them, they would be spirit patterns. But if he used his soul force to construct them, they would be divine patterns. For example, he could use his magic power to construct the mountain plate saber to increase its lethality. He could also construct it with his soul force to transform it into a divine soul attack to attack the enemy's spirit sea. It could be said that most spirit patterns were also divine patterns, and each divine pattern was a soul technique to him. This was difficult. It wasn't difficult for him to construct these divine patterns. It didn't seem like there was anything special about them, but it could be said that he was very proficient in them. Seeing him fall into deep thought, Su Yuan smiled. There's no need to rush to choose the soul-subduing secret technique. This kind of thing has to be done carefully. It's not that there's no suitable one. Lu Yi came back to his senses. With a thought, his soul force surged. Elder, take a look at this. Su Yuan immediately focused his vision. Soul force was usually invisible. Unless it was too condensed, ordinary people wouldn't be able to see it. But the soul race was different. Even the weakest soul race could clearly see the flow of soul force. This kind of illusory power was clearly visible in their eyes. Right now, in Su Yuan's vision, he saw Lu Ye's soul force flow out, and then it quickly spread out. Extremely fine patterns intertwined with each other, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into an oval sphere in front of him. Su Yuan was dumbfounded. After interacting with Lu Yi so many times, he actually didn't know that Lu Yi was a spirit rune master. Of course, he could tell that Lu Yi was constructing a divine rune at this moment. However, this speed was too shocking. Countless yin and yang runes appeared in an instant, perfectly merging with each other. There wasn't the slightest bit of mistake. Even Rizhao shouldn't be able to do this. He couldn't figure out how Lu Yi did it. The only thing that puzzled him was that the divine pattern Lu Yi was constructing, why did it look like an egg? But it wasn't over yet. Su Yuan could feel that the egg he saw was only an outer shell. Inside, more yin and yang elements were constantly being born and merged, and then evolved into some more wonderful changes. With a light sound, the eggshell shattered like a real object. Then, a huge figure was born from the eggshell. It spread its wings and gently fluttered, circling above Lu Ye's head. Vigorous soul force fluctuations swept out in all directions, as if it really was a living creature. Its body was still flowing with a faint golden shadow-like substance, as if it was burning with flames. Fire Phoenix. Su Yuan recognized at a glance that this flying thing that appeared in his field of vision was one of the 4 symbols, the Fire Phoenix. Elder, Can I use this technique as a soul-subduing secret technique? Lu Yi asked. Constructing such a soul technique in an instant didn't seem to consume much of his soul force. The corners of Su Yuan's eyes twitched. For a moment, he didn't know how to answer. What did he mean by can't? That was too good. If the fire phoenix of the four symbols was used as a soul-subduing secret technique, it was completely possible to surpass ranks and kill enemies. Ordinary sunlight wouldn't be able to block it. However, after a moment of silence, Su Yuan said, "This technique is extremely complex. If you really use it as a soul-subduing secret technique, it will consume a lot of energy." When cultivating the soul-subduing secret technique, the more complex the soul technique was, the more expensive it would be to cultivate it, and the slower it would be to improve. This was a matter of course. There were many spirit patterns on the innate skill tree, and there were also many that could become divine patterns. However, the divine edge and holy guard weren't suitable as the foundation for the soul-subduing secret technique, because they were too simple and monotonous. If Lu Yi really chose these two, his cultivation would naturally be extremely fast, but it might not be of much use in a fight. Therefore, although Lu Yi seemed to have a lot of choices, in reality, there weren't many. The Fire Phoenix Divine pattern was the best choice. This thing was much more complex than ordinary divine patterns. Using it as a foundation, it would be difficult to cultivate, but once it was cultivated, the effect it could display in battle was incomparable to the divine edge and holy guard. Moreover, this soul technique only attacks and doesn't defend. Isn't it a bit extreme? Brat, you should know that the reason why the soul-subduing secret technique is named soul-subduing secret technique is mainly to guard one's soul. Therefore, most of the soul-subduing secret techniques in Rizhao's soul-subduing secret technique focus on defense, because no one can predict whether they will encounter an enemy stronger than themselves. If they can stabilize their soul, they will be able to perform better in battle, Su Yuan said. Lu Yi nodded. That's true. Then, he suddenly asked, what did Elder choose as the foundation for the soul-subduing secret technique? Su Yuan smiled faintly. The cultivation of my soul race is different from yours. All of the soul race's soul-subduing secret technique's foundation is within themselves. There is no other choice. Using your body as the foundation? Lu Yi was slightly stunned. Su Yuan said, the soul race does not have a physical body, so our soul body is our physical body, so this is our only choice. Lu Yi couldn't help but recall the battle between him and Zixian. Before Bai Chen died, he had urged his soul-subduing secret technique, but it had been casually blocked by Su Yuan. At that time, Lu Yi hadn't seen any signs of Bai Chen using any method, but now he knew the whole story. The soul race's soul-subduing secret technique was Rizhao's own soul-subduing secret technique, so of course he didn't need to use any other methods. Lu Yi could also do the same, using his own soul body as the foundation to forge his soul-subduing secret technique, but if he really did so, once he engaged in a soul battle with someone else, they would be able to use their soul-subduing secret technique while he could only face them with his own soul body, greatly increasing the risk. Seeing Lu Yi fall into contemplation, Su Yuan smiled slightly. Take a trip to the Heroic Soul Forest, you might be able to gain something there. Heroic Soul Forest? Lu Yi showed a curious look. He had entered and exited the soul race's ancestral land many times, but he had never heard of this Heroic Soul Forest. That is the resting place of my soul race's deceased Rizhao. After they died, their soul bodies dissipated, but many of the soul arts they cultivated before their deaths were preserved. You will be able to see all kinds of soul arts there and perhaps find one suitable for you. Su Yuan explained, every soul race's Rizhao will make a trip there before forging their own soul-subduing secret technique. It can be considered a place of inheritance for my soul race. This was obviously a forbidden area for the soul race, and only Rizhao could enter. Ordinary clansmen were not allowed to enter. Although Lu Yi was a human, the soul race had never treated him as an outsider. Since Su Yuan had good intentions, Lu Yi naturally couldn't refuse. Although he knew that even if he gained something in the Heroic Soul Forest, the soul-subduing secret technique he could choose in the end would be one of the talent trees. If it was just to broaden his horizons, there was no problem. End of chapter. Chapter 2044. When choosing the soul-subduing secret technique, one had to consider one's proficiency level. This was because once one chose a certain soul technique as the foundation, one would have to repeat the process of using that soul technique again and again in order to make the soul-subduing secret technique stronger and stronger. If one wasn't proficient enough, just using a soul technique would take a very long time, and there was even a chance of failure. Naturally, there was no need to talk about cultivation efficiency. Just from this consideration, Lu Yi could only choose the divine patterns on the talent tree because he could construct these divine patterns with a single thought. They would be of great help in cultivating the soul-subduing secret technique. However, Su Yuan was kind enough to let him go to the heroic soul forest, so he naturally couldn't refuse. He would just treat it as an eye-opener. Just as he agreed, Su Yuan suddenly appeared in front of him and raised a finger to tap his forehead. At the same time, Su Yuan's voice sounded in his ear, "Don't move." Lu Yi calmly remained motionless. With this tap, Lu Yi felt his entire body suddenly float and retreated a few steps. When he looked up, he saw an extremely familiar figure sitting in front of him with a familiar long saber hanging from his waist. It was none other than his own physical body. Only then did Lu Yi realize that his soul had already left his body, and the one standing here was his soul body. Only souls can enter the heroic soul forest, flesh and blood cannot enter. Su Yuan explained before warning him, "You've just entered the bright sun realm, so don't casually leave your body outside." "I understand." Lu Yi nodded. Of course, he knew about this taboo. He had never tried an astral projection before because it was too risky. During the astral projection, not only would the physical body not have the slightest bit of protection, the soul itself might also encounter some dangers. Compared to his physical body, his soul body was often extremely fragile. However, this was the soul race's ancestral land, so there was no problem. Moreover, at this moment, Lu Yi was only using his soul body to sense his surroundings, and he felt like a fish in water. Compared to this, his physical body felt like he was bathing in water with his clothes on. Lu Yi really hadn't noticed this difference before. Su Yuan raised his hand again and a spirit light appeared and floated into the distance. "Follow it." Lu Yi glanced at it and hurriedly chased after it. The spirit light was very fast, and it shuttled through the space of the ancestral land, passing by one lotus continent after another. After half a day, a large area of stone pillars appeared in front of him. These stone pillars of different lengths converged to form a large stone forest. When the spirit light arrived here, it suddenly disappeared. Lu Yi understood that this should be the heroic soul forest, the bright sun realm's graveyard. Lu Yi didn't hesitate and plunged into the forest. The heroic spirit forest was shrouded in an extremely dense fog. Entering it was like falling into a thick layer of clouds. The fog was not really fog, but was a dense and pure soul power. Lu Yi could easily absorb and refine it. This place was a treasured land for cultivating one's soul. It was much better than an ordinary lotus land. Even the seven-colored lotus land where the starry sky pond was located couldn't compare to it. Lu Yi looked around curiously. Suddenly, something strange happened. Not far away, there was a flash of light. Suddenly, there was an extremely vast fluctuation of soul power. Lu Yi hurriedly turned his head and saw a sledgehammer appear out of thin air and smash down on his head. This attack caught him off guard. Lu Yi hurriedly tried to dodge, but when the sledgehammer fell, it had the effect of sealing his soul. His soul body was unable to move as if it had met its natural enemy. Lu Yi was shocked. Feeling the power of this blow, he knew he couldn't block it, so he hurriedly tried to construct a holy guard to protect himself. However, his soul force was extremely obscure, and he couldn't construct a holy guard spirit rune. Lu Ye's face darkened as he realized that his soul body had come here. His physical body was still with Su Yuan, and his talent tree hadn't followed him here, so how could he construct a holy guard? Seeing the sledgehammer smash down on him, Lu Yi instantly felt dizzy. It took him a long time to recover, but to Lu Ye's surprise, he hadn't suffered too much damage from this strike. Although his soul still hurt a little, his soul body was already refining the surrounding fog to restore itself, so it wouldn't take long for him to recover. "Su Yuan, There were some things he didn't tell him. The power of the sledgehammer just now was completely from a peak sunshine realm expert. He couldn't block such a blow at all. If he took it head-on, his soul body would be severely injured, and it might even shatter. But now, it was only a minor injury. Lu Yi slowly came to his senses. The soul technique left in the forest of heroic souls wouldn't really kill the soul race's descendants. Otherwise, the new Sunshine Realm experts of the soul race would die every time they came. The departed sun rays of the soul race had left their soul techniques here for the benefit of their descendants, not for the sake of killing. With that in mind, Lu Yi calmed down and looked to the side. Not far away, there was a speck of light floating in the fog. The sledgehammer-like soul technique just now had erupted from this speck of light. After taking that blow, Lu Yi even vaguely understood some of the mysteries of the soul technique. He even had a feeling that if he could come into direct contact with the speck of light, he should be able to understand the cultivation method of the soul technique. Just as he was thinking this, the speck of light faintly flickered. Soul force surged, and an identical sledgehammer came crashing down on his head once more. Again? Lu Yi was shocked. This time, he was prepared and finally had room to dodge. He felt this way, but in fact, he still couldn't dodge. His soul body was injured again, and pain spread all over his body. Lu Yi grimaced and quickly moved away from the speck of light. Although the sledgehammer-like soul technique was powerful, it wasn't suitable for him. Not long after, another speck of light appeared in the fog beside him. Lu Yi suddenly had a bad feeling. Sure enough, almost at the same time he noticed the speck of light, a soul technique erupted from it, turning into an incomparably huge arrow. It pierced through the air and pierced Lu Ye's soul body before flying back. This arrow wasn't any weaker than the sledgehammer from before. It had the ability to directly penetrate Lu Ye's soul body, but it only pierced Lu. Lu Yi had the same feeling as before. If he could come into contact with the speck of light, he would be able to pry into the secrets of the soul technique. Time passed. Lu Yi constantly wandered in the forest of heroic souls, his soul body cycling between being injured and recovering. He finally discovered a pattern. As long as he stood on the stone pillars, the specks of light wouldn't erupt with soul techniques to attack him. But as long as he left the vicinity of the stone pillars, he would definitely be attacked by the specks of light. In just half a day, Lu Ye's horizons were broadened. He finally saw what kind of treasures the Soul Clan ancestors had left behind in the forest of heroic souls. All kinds of mysterious soul techniques were the proud works of the deceased Soul Clan ancestors. Most of the attacks couldn't be blocked by Lu Yi. This was obviously due to the difference in cultivation. He could barely block a few attacks, but in the end he couldn't avoid the result of being repelled. Any one of the soul techniques in the forest of heroic souls had an unimaginable power when unleashed. Lu Yi, who had suffered many losses, examined himself to see if there was any power he could borrow. With his current attainments in soul cultivation, it was very difficult to come into contact with these specks of light. Now that he was in the forest of heroic souls as a soul body, he couldn't use his talent tree. So, he could only rely on his soul body and things related to it. In the previous battle, the soul-suppressing pagoda was destroyed and the soul-anchoring bell was damaged. Other than these two soul treasures, he could only rely on the rainbow god lotus. When the soul body left the body, everything in the spirit sea would be integrated into the soul body, and the rainbow god lotus was no exception. However, the rainbow god lotus didn't seem to be of much help to the current situation. Or rather, it was passive. Those soul techniques only caused him light injuries and didn't kill him because he was protected by the rainbow god lotus. The soul techniques left behind by the Soul Clan ancestors sensed the aura of the rainbow god lotus and thought that he was a descendant of the Soul Clan. Other than that, there didn't seem to be anything else. No. Lu Yi suddenly thought of something that he had forgotten for a long time. Because that thing didn't usually show itself and only existed in the form of an imprint in his spirit sea, Lu Yi had almost forgotten about it. It was only when he carefully examined his soul body that he suddenly discovered something. The imprint of Spectre Ship. This was the benefit he obtained when he first entered the constellation realm and explored Spectre Ship. It had played a crucial role several times. However, ever since he obtained the Rainbow God Lotus to protect his soul body, this imprint slowly faded from his sight. Because compared to protecting his soul body, the Rainbow God Lotus light seemed to be more powerful. This was indeed an imprint, but strictly speaking, it was also a soul technique bestowed upon him by Spectre Ship. Realizing this, Lu Ye's expression changed. His knowledge and experience were far greater than before, so of course he knew how terrifying Spectre Ship was. If he had known about Spectre Ship's background back then, he would never have rashly entered it. Because this thing was a Starry Sky Supreme Treasure. The imprint bestowed by a Starry Sky Supreme Treasure was, to a certain extent, a soul treasure, but this soul treasure was different from ordinary soul treasures. The strength it could display was directly linked to Lu Ye's soul cultivation. What if he used Spectre Ship's imprint as the foundation to create his own soul-subduing secret technique? There weren't many options on the talent tree. The Fire Phoenix Divine Mark was the best choice, but it only attacked and didn't defend, so it had a slight drawback. But Spectre Ship was different. This thing could both attack and defend. When Lu Yi first met Li Shang, in order to escape his control, Li Shang launched a soul battle against him. As a result, Lu Yi used Spectre Ship to teach Li Shang a lesson. This was still fresh in Lu Ye's memory. As for the difficulty of cultivation, although Spectre Ship's imprint was not the talent tree's spirit mark, it was not difficult for Lu Yi to activate this soul technique. It only consumed a lot of soul force. But once he succeeded, this would definitely be a top soul-subduing secret technique. Lu Ye's eyes gradually brightened. He finally knew what choice he should make. End of chapter. Chapter 2045. Lu Yi examined his soul body to find a way to resist the outbreak of those soul techniques, but he was pleasantly surprised. This was not a surprise because the ghost ship's imprint had always been here, but he had forgotten about it for a long time. Thinking about the gains and losses, Lu Yi made a decision. It was true that if he chose the ghost ship's imprint as the foundation of his soul-subduing secret technique, it would be very difficult to cultivate in the future, even more difficult than choosing the Fire Phoenix because the ghost ship itself was much more complicated than the Fire Phoenix, but if he could cultivate it successfully, then this soul-subduing secret technique would definitely be one of the best. Compared to the final harvest, what was the initial investment? Having made up his mind, Lu Yi swept away his previous confusion and hesitation, and his mood suddenly became clear. He flashed to a stone pillar and stood still, immediately urging his soul power and pouring it into the ghost ship's imprint. Since obtaining this imprint, he had urged it several times. The whole process did not require him to do too much, he just needed to provide enough soul power to the imprint. His soul body trembled slightly, and his soul power continued to flow out. The imprint in his soul body shook slightly, and a phantom appeared in front of Lu Yi out of thin air. It was the phantom of a large ship, not in the shape of the starboats in the starry sky, but a real ship that cut through the waves of the sea. The first thing that appeared was the main body of the ship, followed by many details. In a short time, the ghost ship reappeared in front of Lu Yi. But it was not over yet. As Lu Ye's soul power continued to flow, some figures appeared on the empty deck one after another. They were the crew of the ghost ship. Chief Officer Qin Zong, Second Officer Xiao Jianming, Array Master Zhou Xing, Ship Dr. Su Qingwei, and so on. There were not many people, only a dozen or so in total. They were not living creatures, not even soul bodies, but just a part of the ghost ship. When Lu Yi obtained the ghost ship's imprint, these crew members also left their own imprints in the imprint. When Lu Yi reappeared the ghost ship, he also reappeared them. All of this was condensed by Lu Ye's soul power. The crew carried out their duties, and the ghost ship was ready to set sail at any time. Even if the front was a dragon's lair or a tiger's den, as long as Lu Yi gave the order, they would rush into battle without hesitation. Looking at the ghost ship in front of him, Lu Yi checked his soul power consumption and nodded inwardly. Although the consumption was not small, it was still within an acceptable range. Moreover, he was keenly aware of one thing. With his current sunshine cultivation, the Spectre ship was undoubtedly much more solid than when it was in the Constellation Mansion. This was obviously related to his realm. Of course, he could use the ghost ship's imprint to activate this soul technique when he was in the constellation, but the final result would be completely different. But it was still not enough. This was because he could see that although this soul technique had been used, it was crude in every aspect, like a child's doodle. As a normal soul technique, this level was already good enough, whether it was against enemies or for defense, but as a soul-suppressing secret technique, it had many shortcomings. This was within his expectations, because the cultivation process of the soul-subduing secret technique was a process of constant polishing. The next thing to do was to turn the ghost ship into his own soul-subduing secret technique. Lu Yi slowly closed his eyes, and after a while, a painful expression appeared on his face, and his soul body trembled violently. After a while, a light suddenly appeared on his forehead, and then the light flew out of his body like a firefly. Soul. This was the essence that only sunshine cultivators could condense with the help of their soul body. If the soul was lost, the cultivator would be seriously injured in an instant, and may even become an idiot. Lu Yi also opened his eyes at this time, and with a slight movement of his mind, the firefly-like soul suddenly fell into the ghost ship, like a snowflake falling to the ground, and the light merged into it. Combining this soul with the soul technique was the process of choosing the soul-subduing secret technique. And once it was chosen, it was difficult to change it. With the integration of his own soul, Lu Yi clearly felt that the ghost ship in front of him had become more closely connected with him, and he could control this soul technique more easily. Even the faces of the unconscious crew became more lively. After this step was completed, the foundation of the soul-subduing secret technique was set. The next thing to do was to continue to cultivate and polish. No matter which sunshine cultivator chose which soul technique to be the foundation of the soul-subduing secret technique, it was only a framework at the beginning. The sunshine cultivators needed to constantly improve this framework over a long period of time and fill in more and more content so that the soul-subduing secret technique could become stronger and stronger. This was one of the most important cultivation processes that accompanied the sunshine cultivators throughout their cultivation. Because this process was very similar to painting, it was also known as the painting soul. Take the ghost ship for example. If a sunshine cultivator came to see it, they would definitely feel that this soul technique was very lifelike, but in Lu Ye's eyes, it was incomparably crude. The deck was only a prototype without any texture, the mast was a shape, but it was hollow inside, and even the crew were only skin bags. What Lu Yi needed to do next was to constantly fill in the details of the specter ship. When the specter ship could become like a real ship, not only would it have the appearance, but also the inside of the ship wouldn't have any flaws. Only then would the soul-subduing secret technique reach the consummate realm. And this should be related to the condensation of the flower of God. This was undoubtedly a test of patience and perseverance, so every sunshine cultivator's cultivation of the soul-subduing secret technique was a painstaking effort. The initial choice was also related to the difficulty of cultivation in the future. The main reason why Lu Yi had wanted to choose the spirit patterns on the talent tree was because the spirit patterns on the talent tree were very simple to use and could greatly increase the efficiency of cultivation. Now that he had chosen the ghost ship, it was not bad. Because of the existence of the imprint, the soul technique was not difficult to use. Calming his mind, Lu Yi began to polish his soul-subduing secret technique. Just maintaining a secret technique like this consumed a lot of soul power, not to mention the various details that had to be filled in. If this was not the heroic soul forest, Lu Yi would definitely not be able to last long. But the soul power in the heroic soul forest was too dense, and the omnipresent fog was the condensation of pure soul power. Lu Yi could completely absorb it to replenish himself. In this way, even if the consumption and recovery were not balanced, Lu Yi only needed to rest for a period of time, and then he could cultivate again. Such a unique cultivation environment also allowed Lu Ye's cultivation efficiency to be much higher than normal sunshine cultivators. Even if other sunshine cultivators could use spiritual pills to replenish their soul power consumption, it would not be as convenient and fast. Day after day, this kind of cultivation was dry and boring, even more so than Lu Ye's cultivation in the 10,000 Elephant Sea, but he was willing to endure it. on the road to becoming stronger. If he could not endure this little bit of loneliness, then how could he stand above all living things? 2 years later, in the heroic Soul Forest, Lu Yi steered his ghost ship through the fog. Compared to 2 years ago, the ghost ship's appearance did not change much, but only Lu Yi knew that the changes were inside. After 2 years of almost no rest, his soul-subduing secret technique had finally undergone some qualitative changes. Compared to 2 years ago, the Spectre ship was much better in all aspects. According to Su Yuan's explanation, this should be the small accomplishment of the soul-subduing secret technique. Ordinary sunshine cultivators could only reach this level when they reached the middle stage of the sunshine realm. After the small success stage was the large success stage, and after the large success stage was the great success stage. They corresponded to the late stage of the sunshine realm and the peak of the sunshine realm respectively. The advancement of the sunshine realm was not only dependent on one's spiritual power, but also on one's soul. Only when both reached the standard would it be considered an advancement. The reason why some sunshine cultivators were called the peak was because their soul-subduing secret technique had reached the great success stage. For those sunshine cultivators whose soul-subduing secret technique did not reach the great success stage, even if they cultivated their spiritual power to the extreme, they were still only at the late stage. It was very difficult to reach the great success stage of the soul-subduing secret technique. This was related to the initial choice. Some sunshine cultivators chose the soul-subduing secret technique because it was not strong enough. As a result, the early stage of cultivation was easier, but later on, no matter how hard they cultivated, they would not be able to reach the peak of the sunshine realm. This was actually a kind of trade-off. Every sunshine cultivator who made a choice understood the pros and cons in advance. Of course, there were some sunshine cultivators who regretted their choice when they could not advance further, but it was usually too late by then. Therefore, looking at the entire starry sky, cultivators who could reach the late stage of the sunshine realm could basically reach the late stage of the sunshine realm as long as they had enough time. After all, being able to reach the sunshine realm meant that their talent was not bad, but it was not so easy to reach the peak of the sunshine realm. Of course, Lu Yi wanted to test the power of the soul-subduing secret technique. At this moment, the ghost ship was bobbing up and down in a violent storm. Lu Ye's soul body stood on the ship, moving up and down with the ship. The violent storm was the release of a soul technique, and its power was extremely strong. If it was Lu Yi who came here 2 years ago, he would have been dizzy and disoriented. But now, under the protection of the ghost ship, although it was bumpy, it was not a big problem. The ghost ship was enveloped by a layer of light, which was the ship's protective array. The crew was busy running around as if they were really sailing on a magnificent sea. After an incense stick's worth of time, Lu Yi drove the ghost ship out of the center of the storm. I can't stay here any longer. I've used up too much soul power. If I stay here any longer, I'll definitely be exhausted. He found a stone pillar to recover, and when he was fully recovered, he broke into the forest of heroic souls. After trying this several times, Lu Yi had a rough idea of what level his soul-subduing secret technique was at, and he was quite satisfied. Now, when he fought against those old masters, he would no longer be at a disadvantage as easily as before. As long as he could get rid of the trouble in his soul, he would be able to go on a killing spree. With the power of the sword gourd in his hand, as long as the enemy's strength was not too ridiculously strong, who couldn't he kill? It could be said that this cultivation had really made up for his biggest shortcoming. End of chapter. Chapter 2046. The soul-subduing secret technique brought another benefit to Lu Yi. His soul cultivation had reached the middle stage of the sunshine realm, but his cultivation was still at the early sunshine realm. This was quite comical. In the entire universe, the cultivation of the sunshine realm was always more difficult to improve than the cultivation of one's cultivation. Most sunshine realm cultivators would first reach the required level of cultivation before they could think of ways to improve their soul. But it was the opposite for Lu Yi. This was undoubtedly due to the uniqueness of the heroic soul forest. All Lu Yi needed to do now was to raise his spiritual power, and he would be in the middle sunshine realm. This was a piece of cake for him, who had the talent tree. Now that his spiritual source had been perfected, the efficiency of his cultivation had increased tremendously. He only needed to store enough fuel in the talent tree to drill into the 10,000 elephant sea. After a while, Lu Yi returned. 2 years had passed, but his physical body was still sitting there, motionless. If it was an ordinary person, they would have problems after being separated for such a long time. But for Sunshine Realm cultivators like Lu Yi, it was not a big problem. He entered his physical body and slowly stood up. Su Yuan sensed something and looked up. "How is it?" "Thank you for your guidance, Elder. I have gained a lot." Lu Yi replied. He felt that his body was a little uncoordinated, and his speech was a little slurred. It should be the effect of being separated for such a long time. But the discomfort quickly disappeared. "That's good." Su Yuan smiled faintly and didn't ask what Lu Yi had chosen for the soul-subduing secret technique. Everyone had their own determination and choice. He had given Lu Yi some guidance, so the choice was Lu Ye's own business. "Elder, this matter is over. I will return to the 9 states first. I will visit you another day," Lu Yi said. He had not left this place for 2 years, so he naturally had to go back and take a look. Su Yuan seemed to have expected this and was not surprised. He nodded and said, "Go." Lu Yi immediately ran towards the starry pool. When he looked down, he was suddenly stunned. The starry pool in front of him was different from what he remembered. He looked around and slowly realized something. "Elder, why have there been so many large realms in the universe recently?" The starry sky pool reflected the situation of the entire starry sky. The realms, dead stars, and any changes in the outside world were reflected in the starry sky pool. Just like those realms, the appearance of ordinary realms and large realms was different. Large realms were much brighter in the starry sky pool, while ordinary realms were slightly dimmer. Lu Yi had entered and exited the starry sky pond many times. Even if he didn't pay special attention to it, he would still be able to tell if the changes were too obvious. Su Yuan smiled. "I don't know why, but the spiritual energy in the universe has become much more active in recent years, so many realms have been promoted to large realms." Starry sky spirit energy. Lu Yi suddenly remembered what Little Nine had said last time. The starry sky spirit energy around the 9 regions had become active. This was a good thing for the 9 regions because the 9 regions had always been devouring the starry sky spirit energy to strengthen their own foundation. However, Lu Yi did not expect that this change would not only affect the 9 prefectures. From the feedback from the starry sky pool, it seemed like this change had affected the entire starry sky. "Elder, has something like this happened before?" Lu Yi asked. Su Yuan thought for a moment and said, "When this old man was overseeing this place, I didn't encounter any." "Then Elder, do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing?" Su Yuan thought for a moment and said, "Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, who can say for sure? Sometimes, a good thing can become a bad thing, and sometimes, it can be the other way around." Lu Yi looked at Su Yuan speechlessly. The elder did not speak like this in the past. Su Yuan smiled again. "Don't think so much. No matter how the outside world changes, as a cultivator, improving oneself is the most important thing." "That's true." Lu Yi nodded and entered the starry sky pool. After Lu Yi left, Su Yuan's expression slowly turned serious. He sighed. "A great change is imminent. The general trend is coming. Is it a good thing or a bad thing?" This kind of general trend was something that even the long-lived soul race had never experienced. It could be said that in the entire starry sky, no living being with flesh and blood had ever experienced it before. This was because the last time the general trend came was over 100,000 years ago. Even someone as strong as Sunshine had a limited lifespan. Even the Yao race could not live that long. Only the soul race had some records of this due to their special environment. However, the records were not clear. In terms of understanding of the general trend, perhaps only those supreme treasures that coexisted with the starry sky were able to do so. Some supreme treasures had given birth to their own consciousness, such as the famous reincarnation tree. The old man would definitely know something. The large-scale activity of the starry sky's spiritual energy was a sign of the general trend coming. This was recorded in the soul race's ancient records. The last time the general trend came, there were such signs. In fact, this sign had been there for many years. However, ordinary people could not detect it. The soul race's patriarch, Hun Ke, had been investigating this matter. It was rumored that when the general trend came, no one in the entire starry sky would be spared. Even a special space like the soul race's ancestral land was not spared. For some people, the general trend was a carnival. However, for more people, the general trend brought about a disaster. Su Yuan did not say too much to Lu Yi because Lu Ye's cultivation was not high enough. It was meaningless to know these things. Just as he had taught Lu Yi before, some things would be clear once one's cultivation reached a certain level. Knowing it in advance would only add to one's troubles. Near the 9 prefectures, Lu Yi returned. He immediately felt that something was wrong. The entire 9 prefectures had obviously become bigger. The 9 prefectures was a sphere. Looking at it from the starry sky, it might not be a big deal. However, such a change had greatly expanded the territory of the 9 prefectures. Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. He had some guesses. As he flew towards the 9 prefectures, he sent a message to Little Nine to ask about the situation. Soon he received Little Nine's reply. As expected, it was as he had expected. In these 2 years, the integration with the Qing Li Dao world had been completed. All the living beings in the Qing Li Dao world had migrated to the 9 prefectures. Not only that, the entire Qing Li Dao world had been integrated into the 9 prefectures. This was the fundamental reason why the 9 prefectures would become bigger. Because the 9 prefectures now had 2 worlds merged into one. Lu Yi did not know how Little Nine did this. An ordinary world would not have such an ability. However, the result was right in front of him. This was undoubtedly a good thing. Taking a closer look, the entire landscape of the 9 prefectures had changed a lot. In his impression, the positions of some mountains and rivers had changed. Lu Yi was amazed. The integration of the worlds might not be a big deal. However, in the process of integration, it was not easy to ensure the safety of the living beings in the 9 prefectures. However, Little Nine did it. The treasures left by the ancestors of the 9 prefectures for this era had been protecting the 9 prefectures since 10,000 years ago. Until today, it still played an irreplaceable role. Soon, Lu Yi found something wrong again. Little Nine, didn't you say that the integration of the worlds has been completed? Why are there still so many people migrating? Where did they come from? He sensed that there were doors opened by the pillars of divine secrets all over the 9 states. At this moment, many mortals were walking out of those doors with their families and bags of various sizes. There were even some who brought livestock with them. The integration with the Qing Li Dao world has been completed. Now, we are preparing to integrate with the Yu Luo world. Little Nine replied. Yu Luo world? Lu Yi was shocked. Why is the Yu Luo world also being integrated? What happened? Lu Yi could understand why the Qing Li Dao world was willing to integrate. There was a problem with this world. Although it could produce constellations, those constellations could not be promoted to Yu Yao. There was no future. Wu Zhua and Tang Jun could not solve this problem. Now that the 9 prefectures were getting stronger, integrating with the 9 prefectures was undoubtedly a good choice. What was the situation with the Yu Luo world? This has nothing to do with me. Little Nine chuckled. They asked for it themselves. Who? Wan Xiaoa, and that world's Chou Wu. Lu Yi scanned with his divine consciousness. He did not find Wan Xiaoa in the 9 prefectures. She should have returned to the Wanxiang Sea. However, he found Chou Wu somewhere in the Dingzhou. He hurriedly skimmed over there and soon found Chou Wu, who was busy. This large piece of land should have been allocated to the sect led by Chou Wu. There were more than a dozen pillars of heavenly secrets standing here and opening the door. There were people walking out from the door continuously. Realm Lord Zhou. Lu Yi shouted. Chou Wu turned around and said in surprise, Fellow Taoist Lu, I finally see you. What's the matter, Realm Lord? Lu Yi asked. Chou Wu said, It's nothing serious. I will be settling in the 9 prefectures in the future. Please take care of me. Lu Yi nodded. But why did the Yuluo world choose to integrate with the world? Cho Wu smiled. What's wrong with that? The 9 prefectures are now the most powerful world in the galaxy. They have a bright future. If the Yuluo world integrates with them, we can develop better in the future. Besides, the Qinglidao world can integrate with the world. That's right, but the Qinglidao world, Cho Wu nodded and said, of course I know the reason. It's just that Zi Xian's attack last time was frightening. There are too many experts out there. Although Yuluo has given birth to a Rizhao, it's still far from the top domains. Even the domains in the 4 cardinal galaxies are far from it. If the Yuluo world is in danger one day, how can we fight back? Hearing him say this, Lu Yi immediately understood what he meant. The Yuluo world had not only encountered Zi Xian once. Earlier, there was the invasion of the filthy race. These foreign enemies were not people they could deal with. Since they could not deal with them, they would integrate with the 9 prefectures. The 9 prefectures had the Azura field inside and the Fangtsuan mountain outside. In terms of safety, they were not inferior to the top worlds. Cho Wu smiled. I know your intention. We have discussed this matter for a long time before making the decision. Maybe there will be some acclimatization in the short term, but after 2 or 3 generations, this problem will not be a problem. In the future, there will be no Yuluo world, only the 9 prefectures. Since he said so, Lu Yi could not say anything more. Besides, the integration of the Yuluo world would be more beneficial to the 9 prefectures. But, if the Yuluo world was gone, the Yuluo galaxy would be changed to the 9 prefectures galaxy. End of chapter. Chapter 2047. Although he was a little surprised that the Jade Conch domain would also choose to merge, since it was a decision made by Cho Wu and the others, and this would only benefit the 9 states, Lu Yi did not intend to interfere. Perhaps in a few years, the Jade Conch galaxy would only have the 9 states as a large domain. After leaving the 9 states, Lu Yi flew towards the Fangtsuan mountain and met Wu Qima halfway. He had obviously heard that Lu Yi had returned and came to look for him. Junior brother Lu. Wu Qima shouted from afar, excitement and anticipation on his face. The south is coming. Senior brother Chen asked me to inform you so that you can make arrangements. Lu Yi nodded and said, I have already sensed it. As the master of the Fangtsuan mountain, of course he had sensed that the south was not far away. According to the current speed, the south would reach the Jade Conch galaxy in less than 2 to 3 months and complete the merger with the core and the east. At that time, the entire Fangtsuan mountain would only have the west. It was because he sensed this that he went straight to the Fangtsuan mountain to discuss this matter with Chen Xianhai and Wu Qima. After a while, Lu Yi, Chen Xianhai and Wu Qima sat on the Cloud Sea Peak in the Fangtsuan mountain. Lu Yi usually went to the Immortal Spirit Peak, which was Su Yuqing's peak. But now that Su Yuqing was overseeing the Fangtsuan island in the Wanxiang Sea, there were only Chen Xianhai and Wu Qima on the Fangtsuan mountain. In fact, if only the south was coming from the Fangtsuan mountain, he did not need to do anything. Now that the core was leading the south, when the south arrived, it would naturally merge smoothly. The mysteries of the starry sky treasure were not to be underestimated. Even if it had been split for countless years, as long as there was a chance, it could be restored to its original state. But together with the South's Fangtsuan mountain, there was also the blood extinction domain. This required Lu Yi to deal with, otherwise there might be some accidents. After a brief discussion, Lu Yi hurriedly left the Fangtsuan mountain. It would take 2 to 3 months for the South to arrive, so there was no hurry. Before that, he had to return to the Wanxiang Sea. He had been thinking about the transformation of the talent tree. Previously, because he had to cultivate the soul-subduing secret technique, he had to put it aside. Now that he had time, he naturally had to deal with it. If he wanted the talent tree to transform 4 times, he would have to let it devour a lot of high-quality rare flames. The fire gourd was his hope. As long as the fire gourd continued to nurture rare flames for the talent tree to devour, he would be able to increase the talent tree's transformation progress. However, the fire gourd's special flame required a large amount of fire energy to nurture. This kind of consumption was many times more than Lu Yi simply adding fuel to the talent tree. Therefore, he had to return to the Wanxiang Sea to purchase resources that the fire gourd could devour. Yu Yao, who was in charge of overseeing this place, hurriedly bowed to Lu Yi. Lu Yi observed the area for a moment, and he raised an eyebrow. He discovered that the insect path was slightly more stable than before. When the insect path was first accessible, even Su Yiming, a late-stage moon jade expert, had been severely injured. Now, Su Yiming should have been able to force his way through with a small price. He wouldn't have been so severely injured. This was undoubtedly a good sign. It meant that the insect path that connected the galaxy to Wanxiang was slowly stabilizing. One day, it would become an insect path that cultivators could pass through safely. By then, it would be even more convenient for them to travel freely in any constellation. After passing through the insect path, they arrived at the Wanxiang galaxy and headed straight for the Wanxiang Sea. Less than half a day later, Lu Yi sat in his palace, holding the fire gourd as it devoured all kinds of new resources. Because Lu Yi had always been in need of fire attribute resources, the three-world island had always kept a reserve of them. However, Lu Yi's needs were very high this time, and the reserves were clearly not enough. Currently, the three-world island was buying fire attribute resources through various channels. This was not difficult. All he had to do was ask the Wanxiang Island. Jiao Yan would definitely not stop him. Instead, she would cooperate fully. The Rainbow Merchant Guild was also doing their best to help. Over the past 2 years, the three-world island had not changed much. The unforeseen events from back then had gradually faded away. The Wanxiang Sea had returned to its former prosperity. The only difference was that all the top spiritual islands now had their own Rizhao overseeing them. Not only the top spiritual islands, even some of the top spiritual islands had Rizhao's figures. However, all the Rizhao strictly followed one rule. On the Wanxiang Sea, no matter what the scale of the battle was, it had nothing to do with them. None of the Rizhao dared to interfere. While Lu Yi was using the fire gourd to devour fire energy and nurture the special fire, Tang Jun sat beside him and reported to him what had happened on the Wanxiang Sea in the past 2 years. Old Tang was probably old. His reports were long-winded. Lu Yi nodded his head from time to time to show that he was listening attentively. Oh right, there's one more thing. Old Tang suddenly thought of something. Recently, the spiritual energy in the starry sky of the spiritual islands on the Wanxiang Sea has become much denser. I don't know what the source of this change is. Is it good or bad? Lu Yi could not help but look up at him. There are changes in the Wanxiang Sea too? Little Nine had already said that there were changes in the 9 states. He had also seen the changes in the starry sky pool. Lu Yi did not expect that there would be changes in the Wanxiang Sea too. Of course, didn't you notice that the spiritual energy on the island is much denser than before? Old Tang said. Lu Yi did not notice this. He usually did not cultivate on the island. Naturally, he did not pay attention to the spiritual energy on the island. Now that he sensed it, he realized that it was indeed so. Also, in the past few years, there have been a few deserted islands on the Wanxiang Sea that have been reviving. Old Tang continued. Although the revival of deserted islands on the Wanxiang Sea has happened since ancient times, it has never happened so frequently before. The revival of deserted islands was undoubtedly a good thing. This was because the deserted islands that were originally worthless had become valuable after this change. There were many big and small forces on the Wanxiang Sea. However, there were not many forces that could own their own spiritual islands. Most of the cultivators of these forces were wandering around the Wanxiang Sea without a home to rely on. Those who could occupy a spiritual island on such a treasure land, even if it was the lowest level spiritual island, had a force that was at the level of an overlord in their own galaxy. There are also many people who say that it is easier to cultivate than before. Old Tang took a sip of tea and sighed. It's a pity that I have exhausted my potential. I don't know if this is true or not. Are there many people who feel this way? Lu Yi asked. Tang Jun replied, not a lot. I don't even know where the news came from. Furthermore, there are people who are spreading rumors that these unusual changes are the signs of a great change. The rumors are spreading like clouds in the clouds. Lu Yi nodded. Pay more attention to these matters. If there are any abnormalities, inform me immediately. Understood. As he spoke, Lu Yi raised his head and looked outside. He sensed that many people were walking in their direction. I'll take them to Yu Yao first, Lu Yi said. He put away the fire gourd and got up to leave. When he walked out of the palace, he saw many people outside. There were about 100 of them. Shui Yuan was the leader, and Hua Si was by her side. Junior brother, Shui Yuan called out. Lu Yi glanced at her and saw that Shui Yuan's aura was bursting. It was obvious that she could break through her shackles at any time and become Yu Yao. Moreover, she was suppressing her aura. If she didn't suppress it, she would probably start to break through in the next moment. She was not the only one. Most of the others were in the same state. However, their situation was not as obvious as Shui Yuan's. Is everyone ready? Lu Yi asked. We're ready, everyone replied in unison. Then let's go. Shui Yuan immediately took out the azure sea snail and blew into it. The door to the merfolk territory opened. Enter, Lu Yi ordered. Everyone entered in a single file. Lu Yi walked at the very back. He nodded at Hua Si. I'll leave the rest to you. Hua Si took the azure sea snail from Shui Yuan and smiled. Don't worry. Her mission was to blow the azure sea snail again after a few days to bring Lu Yi and the others back. A moment later, Lu Yi and the others appeared in front of the heavenly snail hall of the Emperor Snail Palace. Bai Lu immediately walked over to greet them. She had already greeted them, so she naturally knew why Lu Yi and the others had come. She handed a golden conch to Lu Yi. The Grand Elder left this here. Lu Yi nodded and accepted it. Then he called out to everyone, let's go. He took the lead and rushed forward. A group of peak stage constellation cultivators followed closely behind him, their eyes filled with anticipation. They had all been to the merfolk territory before, but this time, they were not going to the merfolk territory. It was said that the merfolk territory was a starry sky treasure that had been buried under the Wanxiang Sea for countless years. It was called the Constellation Palace. It was projected to the outside world once every 100 years. Every time, it was a grand event in the starry sky. All the constellations could participate in it to train themselves and reap benefits. The cultivators from the three-world island had arrived at the Wanxiang Sea relatively late. They had missed the opening of the Constellation Palace the last time. Of course, they had not seen the grand event, but they had heard of it. It was the scene of nearly 1 million constellations gathering in one place. It was hard to imagine how grand that scene would be. Although they had missed the opening of the Constellation Palace the last time, Lu Yi was taking them to the main body of the Constellation Palace. There, they would be able to advance to Yu Yao and obtain a better spiritual source. Everyone was filled with anticipation. Lu Yi blew into the golden conch, which turned into a layer of protection and blocked the seawater. Lu Yi used his magic power to envelop everyone and flew straight to the Constellation Palace. He was now in the Sunshine Realm. Even under the sea, his speed was extremely fast. In less than half a day, they arrived at the Constellation Palace. Looking at the huge palace from afar, it was like a giant beast sleeping in the deep sea. Before they even got close, they could already feel a boundless sense of oppression. The hundreds of constellations cultivators were all shocked. When they arrived at the main entrance, Lu Yi pushed open the door and led Shui Yuan and the others into the Constellation Palace. Then he let them search for their own spots to advance. Lu Yi divided a portion of his attention to pay attention to Shui Yuan's situation. He looked at the empty palace with some nostalgia. Speaking of which, ever since he brought Bai Lu and a few other merfolk cultivators here to advance Yu Yao, he had not returned. In the blink of an eye, many years had passed. He had also advanced to the Sunshine Realm. End of chapter. Chapter 2048. In the Constellation Hall, hundreds of constellation mansions sat cross-legged, their auras surging. Advancing from the Constellation Hall to the Moon Jade Palace was a process of qualitative change. During this process, cultivators would develop their own art sources, and their spiritual power would also be converted into magic power. It could be said that their strength would experience an explosive growth. Lu Yi focused on Shui Yuan. After all, she was his second senior sister. However, he did not neglect the others. With the current strength of his divine sense, he could easily control the hundreds of constellation mansions. These were the future of the three-world island. After observing for a while, Lu Yi relaxed. They were indeed the elites of the Constellation Hall. Each of them was actually on the verge of advancing, but they had all been suppressing themselves and waiting for this opportunity. Now that they were here and had completely let go, there was almost no possibility of failure. While the constellation mansions were breaking through, Lu Yi fed the fire gourd with fire-type resources to nurture a special flame. After a few days, Lu Yi finally felt that the special flame in the fire gourd had finished nurturing. He impatiently urged the talent tree to devour it. Just like last time, the talent tree's fuel reserves did not change, but the talent tree itself had some strange reactions. However, that was all. Lu Yi did not see any signs of the talent tree transforming. This undoubtedly meant that the special flame it had devoured was far from enough. After estimating the cost of nurturing a special flame, Lu Yi was secretly speechless. Nurturing the special flame in the fire gourd required more spiritual jades than the sword chi in the sword gourd. A ball of special flame required hundreds of millions of spiritual jades. Who knew how many special flames the talent tree would need to devour before it could truly transform? Fortunately, the three-world island controlled the 10,000 Elephant Sea now. If it had been before, the three-world island alone would not have been able to support the two great treasures in Lu Ye's hands. Even now, Lu Yi wasn't sure if he could afford to raise them. Lu Yi had thought that he would never have to worry about spiritual jades again. However, he did not expect that he would still have to suffer the hardships of his past. This was simply unreasonable. However, the talent tree's transformation was something he had to achieve. No matter what price he had to pay, he could not give up. He continued to let the fire gourd devour fire-type resources and nurture the special flame again. On the three-world island, Hua Ci blew the azure sea snail again at the time they had agreed upon. 10 days after Lu Yi and the others left. After the portal opened, the cultivators who had left with Lu Yi walked out one after another. Every single one of them had Yu Yao's aura. Just like Lu Yi, Yu Yao had just broken through and hadn't had the time to stabilize her cultivation. She couldn't control her aura as she wished. Next, what they needed to do was to stabilize themselves and stabilize their cultivation. Lu Yi walked at the back of the group. She nodded at Hua Ci and headed straight for the palace. This batch of constellations was completed. Inside the palace, Tang Jun, who had received the news, hurriedly rushed over and handed over a large pile of storage rings to Lu Yi. All the fire attribute resources that can be purchased on the 10,000 Creations Sea are here. Lu Yi took them and checked them one by one. He shook his head and said, "It's not enough. Continue buying." Still not enough. Tang Jun was shocked. He had no idea what Lu Yi was trying to do. Why did he need so many fire-attributed resources? He had swept through the entire Myriad Sea for this purchase. Only the three-world island had enough spiritual jades in reserve. Otherwise, he would not have been able to pay so much. In the future, other than the necessary expenses, keep 20% of the spiritual jades that the three-world island earns as reserves. Use the rest to purchase fire-attributed resources. Lu Yi finally realized that the transformation of the talent tree was a bottomless pit. During the few days he had been in the Constellation Hall, he had already allowed the talent tree to devour 2 rare fires. If he counted the previous one, it would be 3 times. However, the changes to the talent tree were not obvious. If he wanted to transform the talent tree, the resources at hand were far from enough. "I understand." Tang Jun nodded solemnly. Although he didn't know why Lu Yi needed so many fire-attributed resources, he would do as Lu Yi instructed. "Thank you for your hard work." Lu Yi patted his shoulder and threw all the storage rings into the little flower realm. Old Tang smiled. "It's nothing." I'm happy to be of some use. He couldn't improve his cultivation anymore. He couldn't be of much help during battles. He could only help with these trivial matters. Now that the Qingli Dao world and the 9 states had merged into one, he and Lu Yi were bound together for good or ill. After leaving this matter to Old Tang, Lu Yi rushed towards the insect path. The south was coming, he had to go back and make some preparations. 2 hours later, Lu Yi appeared at the insect path. He didn't go back to the 9 states, nor did he go to the Fangsuan mountain. After sensing the location of the south, Lu Yi rode the planetary boat and headed there. During the journey, he didn't stay idle. He continued to nurture the rare fires. After more than 10 days, he finally saw a huge arm in the distance. Even though he was far away, Lu Yi could feel the strange resonance between his blood clan bloodline and the arm. That arm was undoubtedly the blood extinction world. However, this world had long lost its vitality. The entire shape of the world had also changed. The arm came across the sky with its fingers clenched into a fist. At first glance, it looked like an invisible giant punching out aggressively. Lu Yi also sensed another connection from the fist that was different from the blood clan bloodline. The Fangsuan mountain in the south. Back then, Lu Yi moved the blood extinction world and clenched the Fangsuan mountain in the south in his fist. With the movement of the Fangsuan mountain in the south, he moved the blood extinction world. After observing for a while, Lu Yi put away the planetary boat and jumped up. After a few leaps, he arrived above the blood extinction world and entered the Fangsuan mountain in the south through the gap between the fingers. As soon as he revealed his aura, 4 rays of Rizhao's divine senses immediately sensed him. Obviously, they were the 4 Rizhao from the south. After recognizing his identity, a loud laugh came. I told you, junior brother Lu will definitely come in 3 days. You didn't believe me. It was Wu Ji, the loud voice. Lu Yi smiled and flew towards the Pengyu Peak. The few Rizhao from the south were all gathered here. The Pengyu Peak was the spiritual peak of Yu Qinglu, who was also the oldest and most prestigious Rizhao. Lu Yi came here when he went to help the south, so he was naturally familiar with it. After a while, the old Yu Qinglu led Wu Ji and the other 2 to welcome him on the Pengyu Peak. Lu Yi bowed first. Greetings, senior brothers and senior sisters. His gaze swept over them. Behind Yu Qinglu was Wu Ji on his left, Su Pu on his right, and Xia Yingyue on his right. They were all familiar faces. During the battle with Zixian, these people had also contributed greatly. Yu Qinglu looked at Lu Yi kindly. This old man was relieved to hear that junior brother had advanced to Rizhao. It seems junior brother's realm has stabilized? Facing the oldest Rizhao, Lu Yi had to show a trace of respect, replying to senior brother, my realm has stabilized. That's good, Yu Qinglu nodded, please come in. After you, senior brother, Lu Yi gestured. After a while, everyone took a seat in the hall and chatted for a while before getting down to business. Wu Ji said, Junior brother Lu, the matter of the blood extinction world must be dealt with in advance. If they didn't get rid of the blood extinction world first, as the south approached, the blood extinction world would definitely crash into the Fangsuan mountain. Lu Yi nodded, that's why I came. I will go to the blood extinction world later to investigate and make preparations. That's good, Wu Ji nodded. Back then, Lu Yi could mobilize the blood extinction world as Yueyao. With Rizhao's current cultivation, there was no reason he couldn't do it. The Fangsuan mountain in the 9 states was currently the fusion of the east and the core. The south would soon merge with it. Regarding this, the Rizhao people were looking forward to it. They were not the only ones. Even the West, who were also on their way, had been paying attention to this matter. Everyone wanted to know if there would be any changes to the Fangsuan mountain after this fusion. Yu Qinglu then asked about Lu Ye's soul-subduing secret technique. Lu Yi had just advanced to Rizhao, so of course he had to cultivate the soul-subduing secret technique. This was an experience every Rizhao had. Yu Qinglu only relaxed after hearing Lu Yi say that he had already made a trip to the soul race and gained a lot. The soul race was the authority in this aspect. No race in the universe could compare to them. Since Lu Yi had already gained something from the soul race, they didn't need to embarrass themselves. The topic of conversation then turned to the soul race. Although they had worked together once before, Wu Ji and the others were still very curious as to how Lu Yi was related to the soul tribe. Moreover, it wasn't just an ordinary relationship. Last time, the soul tribe had sent out as many as 11 Rizhao members and thousands of Rizhao members. Clearly, they had reached a level where they would grant Lu Ye's request. Lu Yi gave them a simple explanation. Lu Yi didn't mention anything about the will of the soul race's ancestral land. It was too shocking. He only talked about the soul race's sacred beast, Hupa, and pushed all the blame on it. He then talked about the mermaid race, the flower race, and so on. The Rizhao of the imps clicked their tongues in wonder. In terms of age, each of them was far older than Lu Yi, but in terms of life's opportunities and excitement, they were far inferior. The excitement Lu Yi had encountered in the past few decades was something most cultivators would never encounter in their entire lives. One day later, Lu Yi left the southern Fangsuan mountain and came to the blood extinction world alone. Although he was sure there wasn't much of a problem, this was a matter of great importance. He still had to verify it. He had once refined the blood progenitor's precious blood and swallowed the unpredictable sacred blood. Although Lu Yi was a human, he had an extremely rich and powerful blood race bloodline. In the entire universe, no blood race member could compare to his bloodline. With this advantage, even standing on the world of absolute blood, Lu Yi could feel the close connection between himself and this domain. He had already had this connection in the past. Now that his cultivation had increased, the connection seemed to have deepened. Lu Yi could feel that if he wanted to, he could mobilize the blood extinction world with much less effort than before. What's more, he still had the blood race's ancestral weapon. End of chapter. Chapter 2049. In the world of absolute blood, Lu Yi waited calmly. Until a certain moment, he suddenly felt an abnormal reaction from the entire domain. This reaction was very faint. If not for the resonance between him and the world of absolute blood, he really wouldn't have noticed it. Opening his eyes and looking at the starry sky ahead, Lu Yi understood. This abnormal reaction came from the constant approach of the blood absolute realm and the blood refining realm. These two realms were part of the blood ancestor's body after his death. In the past, they were separated by an unknown distance and naturally had no connection, but now that they were close enough, they could not help but have some strange resonance with each other. And this resonance was gradually growing stronger as they got closer. This was natural. Lu Yi confirmed that this phenomenon wasn't a bad thing and ignored it. Many days passed like this. When Lu Yi looked ahead again, he could already see the outline of the world of blood in the distance. At this time, the speed of the entire world of absolute blood was many times faster than before. At first, the movement of the world of absolute blood to the south was completely due to the pull of the core of the heart mountain. Although the speed wasn't slow, it wasn't too fast either. But now it was obviously different. Not only was the south attracted by the core, but the world of absolute blood was also attracted by the world of blood. It was as if the world of absolute blood couldn't wait to merge with the world of blood. Under the push of these two forces, the speed naturally became much faster than before. It was time. With a thought, Lu Yi took out a long bronze pestle from the little flower realm. It was the ancestral weapon of the blood race that he had seized from the world of absolute blood. Back then, the blood race's Rizhao of the world of absolute blood could join forces to mobilize the domain's power not because of their own abilities, but more because of the ancestral weapon's support. Now that the ancestral weapon was in Lu Ye's hands, the power he could unleash was much greater than the blood race's Rizhao. With the ancestral artifact in hand and his magic power activated, the blood race's divine nature filled the air. Lu Yi could clearly feel that there was an extremely close connection between himself and the world of absolute blood. This vast realm seemed to have become a marionette in his hands, and he could control it however he wanted. The six-fingered peak that had been clenched into a fist suddenly opened slowly, revealing the heart mountain in the south. Lu Yi mobilized the world of absolute blood, and the speed of the entire domain suddenly slowed down. In the next instant, the southern Fangsuan mountain broke away from the blood absolute world and headed straight for the core. On Lu Ye's side, he controlled the blood absolute world and circled around to ensure that there were no obstacles along the way. Only then did he let go of the control of the domain. Without his interference, the blood absolute world immediately flew forward under the guidance of the blood refinement world. From Lu Ye's observation, the world of absolute blood didn't fly straight ahead. Instead, it made some adjustments on its own as it flew. By the time the entire world of absolute blood approached the world of absolute blood, it had already turned into a shape with 6 peaks facing outwards. Then, it perfectly fit into the broken left arm of the huge body. At the moment of fusion and collision, both realms were buzzing and vibrating. 4 figures flew out of the blood-refining realm in a panic. They were none other than the 4 blood warriors who had been in retreat all this time. They had no idea what was going on. When they looked back after flying far away, they were shocked by the scene they saw. The blood-refining realm now had an extra left arm. This change was too obvious. Anyone who wasn't blind would be able to see it. Soon, they sensed Lu Ye's aura and rushed over. "Master!" The 4 blood warriors saluted in unison. "Master, what's going on?" Xiang Yin asked in surprise. "You should know about the formation of the blood race's domains. This is just the fusion of the blood ancestor's left arm and torso," Lu Yi explained casually. His explanation was simple, but the 4 blood warriors were all shocked. This was especially true of Ding Beifeng. He was originally from the blood absolute world, but he had never thought that he would be able to see it again one day, and in such a way at that. "I still have some matters to attend to. You go and check if there is anything wrong with the fusion of these 2 domains. Let me know when you return," Lu Yi ordered before turning around and flying towards Minuscule Mountain. The blood race's 2 domains had already merged, but before that, the southern region had already merged with the core of Minuscule Mountain. Lu Yi had to go there to check the situation. Flying towards Minuscule Mountain, Lu Yi calmly entered the domain. As soon as he entered, Lu Yi felt that something was different. The entire territory of Minuscule Mountain had clearly become much larger. This was to be expected. Back when the eastern region had merged with the core, such changes had also occurred. Not only that, but the world energy within Minuscule Mountain had also greatly improved, and this improvement was still ongoing. Such an environment was undoubtedly more beneficial to the growth of low-level cultivators. At this moment, 2 of the eastern region's Rizhao and 4 of the southern region's Rizhao were gathered together, all of them beaming with joy. Although they could use special methods to communicate in the past, it was still inconvenient and they had to pay a certain price. Now that the southern region and eastern region had merged with the core, only the western region remained. When the western region merged again, Minuscule Mountain would once again be unified and the glory of their ancestors would be restored. This was the goal of countless generations of humans, and no one had thought that it would be achieved in their generation. This was especially true for the oldest, Yu Qinglu. He had thought that there was no hope for him, but who would have thought that he would be able to witness this day with his own eyes? When Lu Yi arrived, the 6 Rizhao all turned their attention to him. Chen Xianhai nodded. "Thank you for your hard work, junior brother." Lu Yi waved his hand. "It's my duty, senior brother is being too serious." He then asked, "Is there anything unusual about this merger?" Chen Xianhai said, "No, the various tribes of Minuscule Mountain were originally one, but it was broken by the blood ancestor back then. There shouldn't be any problems with this merger." "That's good." Lu Yi nodded. With the merger of the 2 tribes, the lesser race's strength had greatly increased. This also greatly increased the safety of the 9 states. Within Minuscule Mountain, countless lesser race members were jubilant, and the entire realm was filled with a joyous atmosphere. After this merger, the lesser race would most likely celebrate for quite a while, but this wasn't the end. The merger of the western region was the final key. Lu Yi didn't stay for too long. He was still thinking about the 2 blood race realms outside. Moments later, Lu Yi left Minuscule Mountain and was about to fly toward the blood refinement realm when Little Nine's voice sounded in his ears. Lu Yi, why didn't you tell me about such an important matter?" Lu Yi played dumb. "What happened?" Little Nine chuckled. It's fine if you don't know. I don't care, I'm going to eat that realm. Of course, what he meant by eating wasn't actually eating, but devouring the foundation of the blood absolute realm. This was very simple for little Nine. He only needed to place a few divine pillars into the blood absolute realm. This was how he had devoured the foundation of the blood absolute realm back then and helped the 9 states become a large realm. However, the 9 states had grown tremendously, and devouring the foundation of the blood absolute realm was much faster and more efficient than before. Lu Yi smiled. The reason he had thought of bringing the blood absolute realm back was mainly for little Nine to eat. Moreover, the process wasn't troublesome. If he really had to drive the realm back himself, he definitely wouldn't have done it. It was too much of a waste of time. However, with the help of the core of minuscule mountain in the south, he only needed to make a few arrangements to bring the blood absolute realm over with the south. This saved him time and effort. Of course, Lu Yi had another idea at the time. He wanted to know if the blood ancestor's body could be pieced together. The result was obvious. He didn't need to piece anything together at all. The blood ancestor's body parts could easily merge together after coming close to each other. This result actually came as a surprise to Lu Yi. However, the blood ancestor was a terrifying expert who could break through minuscule mountain. Even though he had died many years ago and his spirit had long been destroyed, his broken body still had incredible abilities. This didn't seem to be unacceptable. Since this was the case, if he could bring the remaining blood race realms over, wouldn't he be able to make the blood ancestor's body complete? Lu Yi couldn't help but be a little tempted. He had the experience of mobilizing the world of absolute blood. That kind of feeling was as if the entire world of absolute blood had turned into an armor that was draped over his body. He could control the world of absolute blood with his own strength. That level of attack was not something that an ordinary expert could withstand. If the blood absolute realm was already like this, then if he could control the complete body of the blood ancestor, he didn't dare to imagine what kind of terrifying power he could display under such circumstances. It should be known that the blood ancestor was an existence that could contend against a starry sky treasure. His strength was far beyond Lu Ye's current level. Even if he was only controlling a shell, the power of an ordinary treasure couldn't compare to it. Moreover, the blood race realms all had deep and profound foundations. Little Nine could devour their heritage to upgrade the 9 province. If he could bring all the other blood race realms over for Little Nine to devour, wouldn't the 9 province be promoted to a top-level realm? Lu Yi was greatly moved by this idea. Just as he was thinking this, Lu Yi suddenly sensed something and looked in a certain direction, raising his brow. Oh? Have you finally found an opportunity? The direction he was looking at was where Ma Shangxi was cultivating in seclusion. Ma Shangxi was the first blood warrior under Lu Ye's command. She was the first blood warrior he had subdued and had followed Lu Yi for many years, serving him loyally. Lu Yi had always felt that Ma Shangxi wasn't far from breaking through to the Sunshine Realm, but Yu Yao's breakthrough to the Sunshine Realm wasn't easy to break through. Once she broke through, she would be able to advance triumphantly, but if she couldn't, she would only be stuck. Not only Ma Shangxi, but the Xiang Yin and Xianyu sisters were also at this stage. Only Ding Beifeng, who had been subdued in the end, was slightly weaker. In fact, Lu Yi had always thought that the Xiang Yin and Xianyu sisters would be the first to break through to the Sunshine Realm. This was because the 2 sisters' thoughts were connected and they had a special cultivation method, so they had some advantages in this regard. However, he hadn't expected that the first to take this step would be Ma Shangxi. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.